Welcome everybody to the updated Syndra guide. I'm gonna be walking you guys through step by step how to win and carry games on Syndra. If you guys want to get coached by me, link's gonna be in the description. Let's waste no more time and get straight into it. So who's Syndra? What's her champion identity? First of all, she is a classic control mage and she likes to deal damage in a burst fashion. She can 100 to 0 you out of the blue, but she doesn't have the shortest cooldowns, especially in the E, which would warrant her a damage over time champion. Her E ability though is one of the craziest picking tools in the game, and in my opinion it's completely OP in solo queue. We call it Syndra the ADC Haunter because all of these AD carries get constantly caught off guard by your E ability, and having this picking tool in a solo queue environment is absolutely crazy. She's also a really strong laner, and you can basically approach every matchup in such a way that you can minimize or play it, and most of them you can even win because she's a strong laner. Her skill ceiling is also like insanely high because there's so many different rotations of abilities that you can use and that you can combine them in different ways. And there's a lot of skill shots that she has in her kit, and it means that if you get good at landing your skill shots, the amount of damage that you can put out is really, really high. When we're going to be playing Syndra, what can we expect? First of all, landing her spells can be really tricky. She has fully skill shots in her kit. If you have no clue how to land skill shots consistently, you're gonna really struggle. Her E can also give you fake security or safety, especially because this is an ability that you can use offensively and defensively. And a lot of Syndra players don't recognize when they should be using this ability defensively, but they're playing like they got the ability up, which means that they get themselves killed. Therefore, this ability is also like one of the most versatile but also hardest abilities in the game, because there's such a downtime on this ability, there's such a long cooldown that if you misuse it, you're really vulnerable. But if you use it correctly, you'll solo win games with this ability. She can also really struggle with high threat team compositions. Immobile mage, limited self-peel, which is also your offensive tool in the E. If you don't know how to position properly or where the threat comes from, you're gonna die a lot. The complexity of the skirmishing of Syndra and the amount of options that you have on this champion is really, really high. I've played an insane amount of Syndra games myself, and even sometimes I look at my skirmishing and I think like, oh, I just absolutely ruined this skirmish alone by misusing my abilities. This is going to be something that will get solved with a lot of experience, but it's definitely really tricky. The final thing that you'll recognize, and this is especially something I recognize with a lot of newer Syndra players, is they tunnel vision on trying to get that one shot whenever they land an E on top of someone. They try to get that R on top of them, one shot them with the R execute, but instead of that, they actually kill themselves. Yes, you trade 1 for 1, but usually Syndra is not really a champ that likes to do these suicide bomber plays, unless of course the enemy AD carry is so fat that it makes it worth. We're moving on to the runes section of the guide. Syndra can run basically everything, and I'm going to be explaining you guys when to run what. We're going to start off with the El Clasico Syndra page that is strong throughout the entire game. Strong early game, strong mid game, strong late game. This is the Comet into Precision page. Why is this page so good? Well, Comet in general is a really good rune for Syndra because of how it follows up on damage. When you have slows in your kit, you have CC. It makes it really easy to land the Comet from a distance. And Mana Flow Band, I think, is really good on Syndra because it helps us with late lane to mid game transitioning, and the fact that we can overstay tempo and fish for more ease in crucial skirmishes. A lot of people like to take Axiom Arcanist on Syndra. Personally, I don't think it's a bad rune, but it just changes the way that we approach the champion. And I don't think that Syndra is an ult reliant champion. I think that Syndra is a Q and an E reliant champion, and the fact that she looks for these picks, and her ult is usually already a kill in itself. So I'm personally not a big fan of the Axiom Arcanist, and I run Mana Flow Band. So keep that in mind. Then we take Haste. Syndra is so OP with Haste. The fact that you have shorter cooldown on your E means more picks, and therefore we take double Haste in both trees right here, granting us a free 25 Haste. Scorch, it helps us with the early game. If we're playing against a champion that is a little bit stronger early game, that we don't really want to contest in early game or has like a lot of regeneration, we can go for Gathering Storm instead. But usually when I opt in for this page, which I'm going to be contesting the early lane a little bit more, I will opt in for Scorch. A few other things to note is I personally really like to take attack speed shard versus champions that I'm going to be contesting the wave into. if I'm going to be playing into champs in which I'm not going to be contesting the wave, or if they are in a position that I don't need attack speed to contest the wave, you can go haste, because haste, as we established, is OP on Syndra. Same with flat health versus scaling health, depending on if you contest lane or not. That's the mindset. This is a rune page that you cannot go wrong with if you take this every single game, because it's strong throughout the game. What's the difference between ARI versus Comet? Well, we take Comet versus just generally versus longer range champions. If we're going to be auto-attacking a lot, or the champion has a lot of dashes in the sense that they can dodge your Comet, then we're going to be taking ARI. What about Phase Rush? You can also opt in for Phase Rush. That slightly means that you have slightly less damage in the lane, but you got a little bit more mobility. This is really good versus champions that are very linear. And once again, if you're not really looking to contest the lane. So if you need the move speed to get away from champs like Trundle or something like that, Phase Rush can be very OP. The second rune page I'm going to be discussing is the First Strike page. And I like to personally combine that with Sorcery, because of the mana flow band and transcendence. So haste and mana. And a lot of people don't think they need mana, but the way that I fish for picks with Syndra in the mid game, and overstay tempo sometimes, I feel like I need this mana flow rune. Besides that, right? First Strike. We take First Strike versus champs that we're not really going to be contesting in the lane. Or we cannot really contest due to their high health regeneration, so D-Shield abusers. Or if we have a jungler and a support that don't really want any action in the early game. So if the game's going to go slow, we're going to take First Strike. If we have an Enchanter support and a Lilia farming jungle, we're not trying to contest lane, so there's no reason for us to take Comet. We can play more for resource generation and go for scaling with First Strike. We opt in for the free boots. Why do we like the free boots? Well, no, who doesn't like free money? But it also gives us extra move speed. And move speed is a stat that's completely OP on Syndra. Then I like Triple Tonic because of the fact that the Elixir of Skill gives you 5 points on your passive stack, meaning that you can reach your upgraded abilities a lot sooner. If you play against champs that want to dive on you and you feel like you need the HP, you can also opt in for cookies, but generally I think this one is the best. You can go for either Cosmic Insight or Jack of all Trades. Jack of all Trades, in my opinion, is slightly better because it gives damage and haste. Once again, Syndra loves haste. But Cosmic Insight is good if you play against champs that have a lot of lockdown, like Jarvan are, and you need your flash to get out of. That's the only time we're going to be taking Cosmic Insight over Jack of all Trades, if we need our flash up more often. You can also run Precision secondary with like Cutdown and Legend Haste, which gives you theoretically 5 more haste and a little bit more damage on the Cutdown. Definitely strong. But once again, I prioritize the mana myself. If you don't feel like you don't need the mana, pick something else like Gathering Storm or go for the Precision page. That's completely fine. Same thought process right here with the haste over attack speed. Next up, runes. Another one that we got here is the ARI page with Bone Plating secondary. This is used in matchups that are low sustain melees with a lot of kill threat. So the matchups that instantly jump to my mind is Qiyana and Fizz. Qiyana and Fizz are matchups that we're going to be taking this into. If you're running into a Sylas, right, you can also take this page. You don't necessarily have to, but you can also take this page. And you can also take First Strike, but you have to manage your waves well. But into LeBlanc, for example, you also take this page because the bone plating is just too valuable, denying the enemy trading opportunities. And that's why we take this bone plating, because otherwise, if you don't take bone plating versus Qiyana or Fizz, you're going to get yourself absolutely wrecked in the lane and you try to play aggressive. That's it when it comes to the runes. Moving on to the build section of Syndra, and I've gotten so many questions of this one. Generally, Blackfire Torch into Cosmic Drive is your go-to build. This is a build that you cannot go wrong with. And the main reason why this build is so incredibly good on Syndra is because of the fact that it gives so much haste. Haste is super OP on Syndra because you can use your E a lot more often. You can catch enemies off guard, and those E picks was eventually what's going to be the difference maker between you winning or losing games. Besides that, right, this is a really good combination because you also get a lot of movement speed. Movement speed is an OP stat on Syndra as well. The main reason why it's so good on Syndra is because you can then basically increase your E range by catching up to enemies that otherwise would be outranged. You can then walk at them, hold your E for a little bit longer, and because you're slightly faster, you might get these extra dots that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten. Therefore, and you also get HP, which is amazing because this makes it harder for you to get one shot. And therefore, this combination is so good on Syndra. Besides that, right, afterwards we're going to be going for Robodons, because these aren't the highest damage items. We don't have any penetration like that. So Robodons is generally the third item that's going to give us the most amount of value. If you're really far ahead and you feel like you need defensive stats, you can also opt in for Banshees or Zonias third. But either Robodons or Void Staff is usually what I buy, because that's allowing me to deal enough damage. With these two items third, usually, unless you're very far ahead, you don't deal enough damage. And you usually finish the build off though with a fourth item, Banshees or Zonias, or Void Staff if you need, but then you're a little bit of a glass cannon. On your first base, you're going to try to get the Lost Chapter if you can. You can slow the lane down and get Lost Chapter, that's amazing. But there's also going to be lanes where you need to contest a little bit more. In that case, we'd like to opt in for Amp Domes mainly. Get as many as you can. And then later down the line, turn that into a Lost Chapter, of course. Refill is also really good on Syndra because we love trading, and that's going to allow us to look for more potential trading windows. When it comes to the boots, I think that Swifties are mega OP on Syndra. And the reason why this is the case is because we get move speed, and move speed allows us to land more ease. Remember, it also helps us with safety and security because we can kite enemies a lot better and keep them at distance, especially if we combine it with the move speed from Cosmic Drive plus Blackfire, because this is an interaction where it keeps the move speed from Cosmic really high. What is the mindset behind Sorks and Mercs? These are viable boots. When do we buy which? If you're solo AP, Sorks has really high value because the enemies more likely than not won't be buying MR, and then Sorks can be really good. If you're versus annoying pesky CC champions like Leona plus LeBlanc, go yourself Mercs. Mercs is really good for safety if you need it. But it's only one that I opt into if the enemies have multiple AP threats and actually need it to also like survive the side lane or make sure that I need to stay alive. What's the idea behind Blackfire versus Ludens? Because this is not the only build that you can go on Syndra. Well, Ludens was the item that I used to recommend in the past. Right now, Blackfire Cosmic is just so much better than Ludens. And Ludens can be good if it's a good Ludens angle. This is when you're solo AP, when the enemies are squishies and then they don't have too much hard engage, so you don't necessarily need the move speed or the health. And you can then combine this with other penetration items. So Storm Surge, Shadow Flame, they can go Ludens into that, and that's going to then allow you to deal crazy numbers of burst damage and just start one-shotting people at the go. But of course, this is a little bit more glass cannon and also a little bit less utility because you're going to have a lot less haste, which means that looking for these E's, you better land them, because if you miss them, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. On average, this is about 1 every 20 games to give you guys a little bit of input. If you don't know what to do, just literally copy paste this build and you're always going to be fine. I'm going to walk you guys through a few build examples right here. And we're going to start at the bottom. In this case, first against Shock. Let's take a look at what we see. We see that we have a Trash. We see that we have a Lee Sin. And the enemies have a Nautilus and a Nidalee. What do we know? Game's going to be fast. There's going to be a lot of contention happening. Therefore, I opted in for Comet, because that way I can contest the lane a little bit better. If I go first strike, I'm kind of handshaking the lane, farming it up and playing for mid game. But I know that the game's going to be fast because there's a lot of aggressive champs in the early game. That's why I go for Comet. In this case, I am solo AP, but I really value the health because they got quite a bit of threat. And therefore I opted for Blackfire Cosmic. I combine that with Swifties this game because once again, I really value keeping myself alive, making sure that I have the move speed to kite out the enemies, make sure that I don't get caught off guard by random Azir ults, Nautilus hooks. I think this was the best build in this particular game. Next game right here, you see that I'm out of field on bot, of course. That's also going to happen. And I see that I have got an Echo mid. And that means that in this case, we got multiple AP sources. And the enemies, therefore, are very likely to build like MR, which is also what they did. So I opted in for Blackfire, Cosmic with Void Staff and Swifties, of course. And this is then the best combination when you have multiple AP threats. This is usually the core three, Swifties, Cosmic, and Blackfire. And in this case, if they start building MR, you can go Void Staff. If they don't build MR, you can still go Robin's third, depending on if you think they're going to build it or not. Game afterwards, once again, you see a lot of Swifties right here. You don't even see a single Sorks, funnily enough. In this case, we see that the enemies are quite linear. They have very limited hard engage, right? That means that Swifties is just insanely high value. You also don't see a single Ludens in here because I just think that this other build is a lot better. And that means that I'm just very simply autopiloting into Blackfire, Cosmic, Swifties. I'm zooming, I'm fishing for ease together with the high threat that we have on our team, really easily picking up kills. Game afterwards, you see once again, AP bot, AP jungle. So that means that we go Blackfire, Cosmic, Swifties, best combination that you can go. Let's take the only interesting one right here, is then the one on top. In this game, I'm playing versus Kai'Sa, Nautilus, Certus on Victor, and Volibear and Vladimir. These are like 4.5 AP champs on the enemy team. So me getting Mercs is just insanely valuable versus their comp because the MR is just too valuable not to get. In this case, I got one AP threat on top and I got the Leona on bot. So it's up to me to ask myself the question, are they going to be building MR or not? And in that case, they were building starting to build a little bit of MR, and that allowed me to first go Rabadons and then Void Staff because I felt this was enough self-peel. Otherwise, you can also go Void Staff third in this case, and then you're going to be completely fine. This is generally the mindset and practical examples of me building on Syndra. So there's a few things to keep in mind when it comes to Syndra's power curve. In general, her lane is just solid, but she really starts spiking whenever she reaches her Q upgrade because it helps her with creating new trading patterns versus a lot of different champions. So this is a massive spike on Syndra, let alone whenever she gets the Blackfire, that's when she really starts to enable herself as a champion. We get a slight drop in power, but not too much because the components for Cosmic Drive aren't too bad at all. And then at Cosmic Drive, we get a massive spike and we're really enabled as a champion at this particular 2-item spike. Then we get a pretty sharp drop because of the fact that Rabadons is quite awkward to build. And sometimes in this state of the game, what I see in a lot of coaching clients is that they struggle to get that next step from this item to this item, and they kind of get stuck on these needless leads, which are hard to buy, which I totally understand. But if you reach yourself Rabadons, that's when you're fully enabled. You're going to be able to 100-0 almost like all champs that don't buy MR. And from this point, we're really, really enabled. And we kind of just balance out after that point with each other spike afterwards as well. Pretty average power curve. This is how you want to view it. Mainly, these two are incredibly good to keep in mind. How does Syndra interact with the fundamentals? Syndra, in general, uses a lot of fundamentals because she's a control mage, a classic control mage. If you have good fundamental understanding, you're really going to be able to make this champion work. Wave management and understanding of trading concepts is going to enable you as a champion in the lane. And that's really going to be allowing you to then to start dominating lanes as well. If you're a better fundamental player than the enemy team and you're playing Syndra than the enemy player, you're more likely going to win. You're more likely not going to win. Resets are also pretty important, right? Because if you can time your resets well with proper wave management and trading, you're going to put yourself in such a strong position. In general, though, what we want to do is we want to use all of this to get to our Q upgrade, get lane control, be first at objectives, and then let the enemies run into us. That's how we want to be using the fundamentals to play towards our strength on Syndra. We're going to be moving on to the skill order, and this is where a lot of people start to struggle when it comes to this initial part of Syndra's skill order. Of course, it's clear we're going to be maxing Q into W into E. Why don't we max E second? Well, E doesn't reduce cooldown. It only is damage increase, so it's useless to max second. That's why we do W, because it lowers cooldown and massively increases your damage output. So Q into W into E max. We always take like Q level 1 because it's our shortest cooldown ability. When do we take W? When do we take E at level 2? Well, W in general is the better ability on Syndra level 2 because of the fact that it has a shorter cooldown, right? And this is a very, 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 very important one. And it means that you can get more trading opportunities in the lane without being on downtime and vulnerable towards enemies getting on towards you. A lot of people make the mistake of taking E secondary, and because it feels good. Like E is one of those abilities you land it feels good to land. But generally, W is a lot better to take level 2. The only time that I take E level 2 instead of level 3, and then I take W at level 3, is if I'm versus a champion that I need the E into to stay safe, otherwise they'll annihilate me in trades. Good examples are Yasuo, Irelia. These champs, they can just jump on top of your face if you don't have your E available. Hence is why I like to take E into those at level 2 rather than the W. We on Syndra will always be taking Flash TP. Flash because it's the most flexible summoner spell, and TP because it gives us a lot more options and resources in the mid game, and it allows us to make tempo plays, aka be early on plays and still get access to resources without being in bad positions yourself. So we're going to be taking a look at Syndra's lane. What does Syndra want to be achieving in the lane? Generally, the only thing that she wants to do is she kind of wants to just get strong and hit her key spikes on a Q upgrade and Lost Chapter. That's just the basis of the lane. But there's many different ways of how we can get there. We can get there by dominating the enemy lane opponent and playing to win lane. We can play neutral, we can play defensive, depending on the matchup. And depending on the matchup, we also change the way that we're going to be playing out the waves. I talk about the small wins mindset right here. Some people may not know what the small wins mindset is. This is slowly chipping away at the enemy's HP bar while staying quite healthy yourself. That way you can dictate whenever you want to be resetting without being forced out of the bad resets. And it means that it's easy for you to dictate and keep the control on the lane, which is what a control mate wants to be doing. We want to be timing our abilities with the enemy's last hits. We got skill shots in our kit. If we miss our abilities, we're going to be useless. If we land our abilities, we're going to be very oppressive. Timing that with the enemy last hits and trading when the enemy is last hitting means that the enemy needs to be making a decision between two bad choices. Either they drop the creep and they lose gold, or they're going to hit the creep, stand still, and in animation they're going to get hit by your abilities, which means that you're going to slowly chip away the HP bar and get a little bit of control in the lane. E usage is a big thing in the lane because E usage is E is just such a hard ability to use. And E is this ability that you gotta be very aware of, in the sense that if you use it, it has a 70 seconds cooldown, and it means that afterwards you're really vulnerable to getting engaged upon, ganked, chased down the long lane, abused if your wave state's bad. E is your safety and your self-peel. So you should not use E if you're in a vulnerable position. And this is what I see a lot of Syndra players that I coach make mistakes in. So, as a bonus thing, we can also stack up our passive. The sooner we reach our Q upgrade, the better it is. We want to usually be playing in an ability rotation of either 2 and 3. I'm going to be discussing that a little bit more depending on the matchups. But generally, get to your Lost Chapter and your Q upgrade as soon as possible, and then you're going to be in a good position. Let's take a look at a few examples. So in this example, we're going to be taking a look at ability usage in lane. How do we use our abilities in the lane? And I'm going to be showing you guys all different types of ways to use your abilities, and also how to land them consistently onto the enemy. So I'm playing versus Akshan in this case. Akshan is an auto attack oriented champion. That means that this is the perfect example to train your timing abilities with enemy last hits, because Akshan needs to stand still to last hit minions. So we're going to be walking through my ability usage and how I throw my abilities. So one thing that you see me do right here is I am trying to make sure that I can time my abilities onto his last hits. And I don't necessarily throw an abilities instantly. I'm checking out his movement patterns right here. And I also, what I do right here is I'm checking out his movement patterns, see how he's going to be playing. And I try to time my abilities whenever he's standing still and out attacking. So there's a reason I don't use my Q before this, is because if I use my Q before this, he doesn't need to be scared of me anymore. And he can just walk at me and start out attacking. So I just keep up my Q right here, and only right now when the wave is pushing into me really, really hard and I don't have any of my minions to last hit, I can just now hit the Q, safely create distance. Akshan's a very strong early game champ, and I opted him for First Strike, which is not that strong of early game rune page. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to try to, from this point onwards, start hitting and timing our abilities with his last hits whenever he's stepping up. So this Q, you see how I'm setting myself up for this Q. I've just last hit my minions. He now has his minion to last hit. And that means that I can walk forward right here in range of this particular minion. And knowing that he's going to be going for this last hit, I Q him. Either he gets hit by that Q or he's going to drop the minion. We're going to now nicely get level 2 right here. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Akshan is a champ. I take E into level 2. Why? It's a big dash. If he jumps on top of our face with this dash, we're going to get absolutely nuked in the trades. So in this case, I'd like to do E level 2. What I do in this case is I go for an E into Q combo. What you can do is you don't necessarily have to always Q into E. Q into E feels satisfying and it's good because you can stun someone. But if someone's already in your E range, it's much better to E into Q. And this is something that I don't see a lot of Syndra players use, but it's super OP because it guarantees your Q landing. While if you do not do this, your Q is not guaranteed to land, neither is your E. So what you can do is if someone's going for a last hit in this case, you can walk up, get in E range first, and then E into Q, and then the E will bump the player into your Q, getting yourself a guaranteed passive stack. Very strong way to go about it. And the main reason why I'm allowed to use E offensively in this case, none of my creeps are dying right now, which means that he can not trade back onto me. Plus the wave is so close on my side that he cannot swing at me as well. Therefore, I take E into Q into the action. So now we're going to wait. We're going to CS a little bit. Hey, minions dying right here. Q. I've created my minions in such a way that I don't have a single minion to last hit. He does. So I can Q and chip away at this health bar very, very slowly. I'm being very nasty here because I freeze the wave a little bit, hold the wave a little bit out my side, which means that he now has to step up quite deeply to take and hit the minions and get this wave state out of this position. So once again, I make sure that I manage my minions in such a way that this minion is now dying at a time where I have no minions to last hit, which means that I now have an opportunity to potentially hit him. I try to Q, but what he does is he fakes his movement a little bit, and what he does is he actually, instead of out-attacking, throws a Q himself. Well played to Akshan. Great stuff by him. We're going to continue right here. We're now reaching level 3. So what do we want to do whenever we're at this point as Syndra? So we now have all 3 of our abilities. We can decide to either play in an ability rotation of 2, or we're going to be playing in an ability rotation of 3, depending on your goal in the lane. If your goal is to get stacks and play with the small wins mindset without losing pressure in the lane, you're going to play in an ability rotation of 2, and you're going to try to combine W into Q. W into Q is a very powerful ability rotation because your W is really long range, it's easy to land, and what it does, it slows people. So whenever you slow someone, it's super easy to afterwards land your Q. A lot of people don't do this. They don't utilize this blatantly clear way of trading on Syndra, and therefore they're missing out on a lot of opportunities. They try to QE and stuff like that, and you can do that, but that's only when you want to be playing in a rotation of 3. And the reason why you want to then play in a rotation of 3 is if you play for raw damage. So because you play for damage onto the enemies, then you can play in an ability rotation of 3. You can only do that, of course, when the enemies cannot retaliate onto you with you having no abilities, because you're cooldown-oriented champ, you got pretty long cooldowns in the early game. So usually I like to play in a rotation of 2, unless I see a very clear window, then I'll play in a rotation of 3. In this case, you see what I do. I play in a rotation of 3 right here. And very specifically, what I do is E into Q, because he needs to step up to last hit that. And then I press my W afterwards as well, because he does not have the opportunity to chase me down the long lane right here, because he's too low. And there's no immediate threat from him onto my side. He cannot kill me before my cooldowns come back up. That's why I'm able to play in a rotation of 3. So what we're going to be doing right here is we're going to slow play, we're going to wait for our abilities to come back up, and now we're going to try to punish him onto the next last hit. Nice little Q right there. You don't have to always commit your abilities. And what you see is that I'm stepping up quite aggressively, and another beautiful Q into a W in this case. Why do I go from Q into W instead of a W into Q? Well, this Q was a little bit of a skill check Q. I was trying to, this wasn't really one timed with a last hit. This one, he was just mistethering me. Therefore, I threw it out. If this would not have, if he would have respected me, I would have not thrown an ability, waited to throw anything, and then use a W into Q onto the last hit. So pick up the W, then Q him. As you can see, we play still on an ability rotation of 2 because we don't want to be using our E there. It doesn't make sense because our E in itself doesn't deal that much damage. It's also a little bit of a setup tool. And we are with a pushing out wave state, so that means that we're insanely vulnerable to ganks. So we get ourselves a nice little ward out. And what we're going to do right now is try to time our ability onto the next last hit. In this case, very important thing to keep in mind. Look what I do. As I step up aggressively towards this minion, looking to punish him, and I don't just blatantly throw out my ability. I see that he's respecting me. He's going to give this creep. In this position, he will never ever be able to outtake this creep on time, so I'm not throwing my abilities. I'm waiting for the cue of him standing still and hitting the creeps. So he goes invis. I know exactly what he's going to be doing. One of these next minions is dying. So knowing that, I'm preemptively queuing right there, because if I would be Akshan, I would be standing right there and I land him with that beautiful Q. So we're now in this position where he's incredibly low. And what I do right here is I try to catch him off guard and potentially kill him. So what I do right here is I pick up my W right now, and I'm going to go for, and I'm going to wait for my Q to come back up. And then I'm going to go for a little bit of a W into E right here, because this is one that the enemies never see. Unfortunately, I barely don't get the kill. If I would be running Combat Scorch, this guy would have died. So this is another thing that you can do. This catches a lot of people off guard, this particular this particular all-in combo, basically, because you use all 3 of your abilities. People don't understand where that stun's coming from. It's really hard to see as well because of the angle of the W right here. You see that how this ball gets thrown. How can they know where they need to position when the angle of this W is like that? It can land right there. It can land right there. Almost impossible to dodge, like unless you have crazy good anticipation and movement. So, yeah, in this case, we just have all of these small wins playing onto the Akshan, and I haven't taken a single bit of damage in return. Perfect example of small wins mindset and good ability usage. We're going to continue right now. We're walking back to lane. In this case, we didn't need the TP. And I'm completely fine using my E right here because the wave's coming into me. So I'm not in any type of way, shape, or form vulnerable towards the Akshan. And therefore, it doesn't matter that my E is on cooldown right now. Akshan goes for a little bit of a Roman bot. I'm pushing out mid. And afterwards, we got ourselves a nice little pick off by the Udyr. And we go for a nice little kill onto the Akshan. So we're in a fantastic position right now. Let's see how we can translate this lead a little bit further. What we're going to be doing is same situation. He needs to walk up to CS. We're going to punish him for it. So he needs to get in range. This was a little bit of a space-oriented Q. I'm not exactly timing it with the last hit, but I know that if he wants to hit the next main, he either needs to walk through here or through here to get in range. So I skill check him a little bit with this Q right there. Isn't always the most guaranteed. Then I play with the W onto the next creep. And one of the things that I do is go do a little bit of R into E. So why do I do this particular situation? Well, I've got one ball out on the field right now. Akshan is a roam-oriented champion. So I go for a lane control R. And the idea of this lane control R is to make it impossible for him to do whatever he wants. I'm going to put him low under pressure. And that way I'm going to keep up the lane control because he's so low that he's constantly on the kill threat. So he dashes in onto me. I R into E because there's then multiple balls onto the ground. Because my new Q is coming up, it again sets me up for the next Q for free. So it's an undodgeable Q now as well. And you see that the amount of damage that I deal towards him, with him only having one extra pot alive in the pocket, which means that he's just going to be permanently low and permanently under pressure in the lane right now. Granting us the free grubbies right here. And we're now getting quite close to the level 7 and also our Q upgrade. And then we're really getting to a strong position. So I tried to catch him off guard a little bit with this E into W. Wasn't the best, but in the end, we do get ourselves a reset. We can potentially reset, but it looks like I wait a little bit more for my item because I'm so close. And therefore I'm playing slightly more safe. You see that there's also a QE into W combo. Only use this combo if you're going to be safe that he doesn't E on top of us later down the line. In this case, we get our Q upgrade, we nuke the next wave, we reset on our Blackfire Torch. I would say very, very, very successful early lane. A lot of good abilities in this one. Alright guys, I'm going to walk you through a few combos and micro interactions that are really important to keep in mind whenever you're playing Syndra. A lot of people don't know many of these, so we're just going to break them down. I'm going to also explain you guys why it works and how you can apply it in game. So one of the things that we can do ourselves as Syndra is we are not intentionally bound to everything. If we Q outside of our ranges right here, we see that the Q gets put at max range, even without the clamp cast setting being on. And that's a setting that I actually don't necessarily recommend being on. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And it means that what we can do is we can do some fadeaway Qs. So whenever we're walking, for example, in that direction, away from the enemies, we can still Q them. And it makes it really hard for them to actually see that you're queuing them because they're looking at you walking away, which signals that they shouldn't be threatened. But in the meantime, they actually get hit by a Q. So fadeaway Qs are actually very, very strong to utilize. Next tips are going to be when it comes to the W. The W is an ability that I see a lot of people misuse. And one of the things that I see is if you have your ball right here, a lot of people will grab up the ball with their mouse on their ball and then click onto the enemy champion. that's quite a few mouse movements that you have to do right here. So you go from here to there. It works, of course, great. But the W can sometimes be very tricky to cast, because the W is an ability that if you click outside of the range, you walk forward first and then you cast it. This is not like clamp casted in such a way. So a lot of people, what I see do is they do this and then they misclick and then walk forward and their entire combo is slow as shit. So what you can do instead is your W is actually an ability that grabs up the nearest sphere. So if your spear is right there, you can preemptively, let's just have the spear right here, you can preemptively have your W onto the target and double click it. So you don't have to do that mouse movement and you can instantly play on the edge of the range. See how unskilled it is what I'm doing? Double click W and it's working because it's grabbing the closest sphere. It says it literally in the tooltip. If no target is selected, grab the nearest dark sphere. This also works with dark spheres outside of your range. So in this case, you just grab it like that. And even if it's outside of your range right here, in this case, it's a little bit too far away. You gotta have it slightly closer to the W if it's outside of the range, otherwise it won't be taking it. But if you have it, for example, right there outside of your range, you can grab it up like there and it still works out. Another thing that you can do is you can do a little bit of a faster W. So there's a big difference in you throwing out your Q right here, grabbing up the W right here, and then it gets put behind you. And if you then throw it out, you see that it takes quite this big leap, this big jump. And it gives time for the enemies to dodge it out. So what happens if you are standing backwards right here? If you Q that like the way, if it stands backwards, you see that the W then gets put behind you. And if you then throw it out, it goes a lot faster already. So it's a little bit of micro movement that you got to do. Because if you pick up the W in front of you, you see that you got to first click backwards, have the W go behind, and then throw it. And this can be quite a tricky thing to do for some people. Especially because if you pick up the W that's in front of you right here, even though you're clicking backwards, that you go towards your front side. Another thing that you can do, right, is in this situation, is the faster you press W, the faster it's going to get out. Because there's going to be times where the sphere is already out, and what you can then do is you can then instantly press the W, and the sphere actually doesn't take the full rotation sometimes. A very similar thing is if you, for example, Q into WW, you see how fast that this ball flies out comparatively towards the other ones. In this case, I grabbed that one because it wasn't gone yet, so I gotta slightly wait until these spheres disappear, and then you can do a Q into WW, and it's a little bit faster than if you would just take it a lot of times. And there's even situations where if you do really fast micro movement and you actually click backwards, like that, it goes incredibly fast and it's just really hard for the enemies to respond to, because you're facing backwards, it kind of instantly goes to the backwards position, and then it just goes incredibly fast and you get yourself a really easy to land combo. Brutally hard to do. This W is actually such a hard ability to use. Like I barely see people use this ability correctly because it's such a hard ability, and I don't blame people for it. So next thing you can do, right, is we're gonna combine this W a little bit with our E, because the W plus E, if you guys want to fact check it, like you can just freeze frame. If you Q plus E, you see it's very linear, it's very easy for you to follow. If you W plus E, it goes a lot faster to stun. And the angle of the stun is really hard to see because of the fact that your W flies in a little bit of a cone. Like if you follow my mouse movement, that's how the W flies, right? So it's fucking impossible to see this ability if you're gonna be looking for a pick. In the mid game, if you wanna pick the AD carries, don't go for a QE, right? Go for a WE. They will never see that shit coming. It's really dead OP. Besides that, you can also use this in combination with your Q. So you can have a ball out right there, and then you can have a ball picked up. Then you let's actually not do it with a ball on the ground. Let's just have one ball that we pick up right here. If we Q there and we W there, we can have a double angle in the stun, which is gonna catch a lot of people off guard. And these are just must-know tips and tricks to navigate yourself into these mid-game scenarios, picking enemies and catching them off guard whenever they're not 100% and 10% focused on you. We're going to be taking a look at how to approach matchups in lane as Syndra. We're going to be starting off with the ranged matchups. We want to be contesting the wave really heavily. If we can create the slow push and create the minion advantage, we will be able to create favorable trading windows on top of us, because we have already last hit our minion. The enemies still need to last hit their minion, and that's going to allow us a really easy time to land our abilities on top of them. So the way that we can do it is by standing outside of the wave and being early on the wave whenever it spawns. So take up space early in the lane. Don't be AFK for the first 10 seconds because you're going to lose push, you're going to lose the prio on the wave, and it's very important to get that. So by having the minion advantage, you'll create trading windows and you're going to try to time your abilities onto the enemy last hits. If we can do that, we're going to put ourselves in a position where we can slowly chip away at the enemy's HP bar. And we usually play in a cycle of 2 or 3 abilities. If we were to play in a cycle of 2, we play for passive stacks and for a little bit of safety and security. And if we play on a cycle of 3, we're playing purely with the intention to nuke the enemy's HP bar. We really want to preserve HP in the lane as well. We don't want to drop too low. We don't want to trade too heavily because we want to have lane control. Whenever you're playing mage v mage or just generally range matchups, you want to keep up the lane control, have the slow push into enemies, and always be the first one that's able to move to place. We want to also therefore ward and lean on one side and keep slow pushing waves into the enemies in a cycle of 2, so we can keep up the trading windows on top of them while staying safe behind of the minions, while keeping up lane control and making sure that the enemies are always responding towards us. This is, of course, the ideal scenario, and this is not going to happen all the time. Some laners will be a little bit stronger than you, for example, Victor, and if you're playing against a good Victor player or one that's even slightly better than you, it's going to be really hard for you to contest and win. So I got an example of the perfect Syndra lane of how to contest, look for these trading windows and slowly chip away at the enemies. And I got an example lined up where I play against Certus on Victor, very strong player, and in which that I have to adapt and I cannot really get the push in the early game. Let's break it down. So in this first matchup, we're going to be playing against Xerath. And one thing that we have to really establish is how we're going to be getting the push into this Xerath. It's very important to get the push into him, because if I do not get the push into him, he's going to be harassing me when I'm last hitting, also in the tower, because he's got such long range. But what we do know is we have shorter cooldowns than the Xerath. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be pressuring him off in the early game right here already. I'm going to be playing in a little bit of a wave war with him, because the earlier that I can get access to the minions, the faster I can actually keep up the push. So this initial Q right here is also used in such a way to potentially hit him and for sure hit the minions. So I already got a little bit of an advantage onto the wave right now. With my shorter cooldowns, I can really abuse this. And what you see that the Xerath does is the Xerath tries to get the push as well, because he knows how these mage matchups play out. And he's forced to use his Q for that. But because my Q has shorter cooldowns than him, I can now utilize this to my advantage, step up aggressively, and look for a trade when he doesn't have his ability up. So beautiful Q when his minion was dying, and he cannot really hit me back. And we see that I'm out-attacking the minion wave a lot right here, just to make sure that I can keep up the push versus him. He's charging up his Q. I'm standing outside of the wave, so he doesn't get the opportunity to hit me and the wave at the same time. That would be a high value ability. We want to avoid these at all costs to prevent him from getting the wave. Once again, he uses his cooldowns. That means that I can just use my Q whenever he's last hitting. And both of us are heavily contesting the wave like that. This one. A lot of people may be wondering, oh, Xerath just got you right here. Well, maybe. What he did is he Q'd me. And what happens after he Qs me is he now has got no ability. So I intentionally get hit by this Q right here. I use my HP as a little bit of a resource to make sure that I can now grab up a little bit more push onto this wave. And I can instantly start out-attacking him while zoning him off, because he's not in a position where he can out-attack. Otherwise, he's going to get Q'd by me. So he tried there, and therefore he tried to get in range to out-attack, but I skill checked him, I Q'd him. He tried to dodge it out. It was a really good attempt by the Xerath. And now I get my level 2 first, and he needs to last hit, because I've already last hit my minion, so I can now also land the W. So by me taking that little bit of damage right there by the Xerath Q, investing my HP, I get it back, plus keeping up the wave prio in this particular lane. This was very strong here. And because I have the lane control, and I've got the push into him, I also now have space in the lane in which that I can trade off. Because I'm already deeper in the lane, I already got the push, I can now trade off space. And because I can trade off space, what happens is that I can easily juke out on his W right here, because he is not the one that is pushing me in, I'm pushing him in, so it's easier for me to walk backwards. And therefore, he now misses out on that damage. He now also uses his Q. He is screwed. He's got no cooldowns, wave pushing into him. He needs the last hit. So really nice juke out by him there. Very well played. Really good stuff, recognizing that I was about to trade onto him. In general, I should have been up more aggressively. I'm playing like a bitch right now. I should be right here in his face. He's got no cooldowns. I should be deeper up in this, and I should easily harass him onto this creep. I should never ever give him the opportunity to get this. So that's on me. Small mistake by me. So next situation, right? We keep the push up, and what we see that he does here is he now tries to hit us whenever we are last hitting a minion. This is what you see a lot in control mage versus control mage matchup. Syndra is one of these champions that can counter that. Syndra is one of the best counterers of trading windows that there's in the game, because we can pick up low health minions with our W, kill them with our W, and in the meantime we can also hit the enemies while we're at it. So I know that he's gonna try to hit me, but I still play aggressive because I don't have to put a lot of mental stack onto this minion, because I can just pick it up with my W right now and get a high value ability, as in killing the creep, and then I trade with the Seraph, getting my passive stack. This is good trading for me because of the fact that not only do we trade out attacks, which is fine for me because I'm a little bit stronger in the early game. What also happens is that he's lower, I'm higher HP, so trading is generally favorable for me. He also has got no cooldowns, so it's not like he can win out the trade. And another thing that happens right here is I actually make sure that my minion's hitting him, because we both draw minion aggro right here, and I get extra minion that's hitting him. Plus, since I draw minion aggro onto the melee right here, I can now pull this next melee back, playing in this cycle of 2, so now my minion wave gets a little bit closer towards my side instead of it being stuck on his side, which means that I can use this to create a bigger slow push, get more space up in the lane, zone him off further, and make him fight for every inch that he can actually play for in this lane. So we're going to utilize this to now get a little bit of a vision ward out while keeping up the push, warding towards bot side. This is the side where our jungle is clearing to, so I can easily lean towards bot side. And we're now going to be looking to create more favorable trading windows. In this case, really nice W by him. Doesn't really matter. He's going to lose the creep for it. Plus, he now is running low. So I'm looking to contest him onto this minion. I had to try to do a little bit of a fancy W onto the last hit, but it seems like he just gives the last hit. And therefore, that's also completely fine for me. I don't mind it. And there's a very important reason why I don't E here. So a lot of people would QE this Seraph right here. It's not good to E because you're slow pushing into the enemies. And that means that if the enemy jungle shows up, you're screwed. So it's better to play in WQ. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. Play in the WQ. And I'm just trying to aggressively posture and zone him off creeps right here. I'm not wasting my cooldowns. I'm actually playing a little bit slow, a little bit safe. And I'm now aggressively posturing when these creeps are dying. Not before that. I don't want to put myself in a risky position. And you see I'm also leaning bot side, making sure that if something happens on bot side and my Z gets a skirmish happening, I can instantly move. And in the meantime, I keep up the full control on the lane while also being safe. So this W, high value W, right? I pick up the minion, right? I don't have to hit it with my own minions. I walk forward and I harass him onto his minions. And what I do is I do a W into Q. No E. I'm playing in an ability rotation of 2 right here because I don't want to use my E because I'm aggressively up in the lane. So really nice W into Q, getting the passive stack, slowly chipping away this health bar while staying in absolute control and save ourselves. And we have to Q that, unfortunately, to get both of the creeps, but that's fine. Now we can harass him under the turret whenever he needs to last hit. So he drops this particular cannon. Otherwise, he would have gotten hit by the W. Either he gets the cannon or he gets hit by the W. It's a win-win for me. And I try to play in a little bit of a cycle right here of 2. Why am I okay using my QE right here? Well, my Z is currently in a position where he can cover me. And another reason is that I am currently not in a position where I need to last hit a single minion because my waves fully crashed. So it's not like my waves that can ever get frozen on if I get jungle ganked right now. So therefore, I'm pretty happy using my QE right there. Besides that, I missed it like a really hard, but the idea was completely fine. So we're going to try to do the exact same thing here. In this case, we're going to push the wave, put a little bit of pressure under him. We now spot the Nunu. Right, we're playing versus a Nunu in this game. That's especially why it's so important to keep up the E, because this Nunu will just run you down. And right here, really nice ability usage. Hitting him when he's forced to last it in the tower, and going for a nice QE when he's close to the turret, because that makes it less easy for him to dodge out, because there's terrain that he has to work around with. We opted for a nice little reset. Unfortunately, not on this chapter, but it's fine because we got a much stronger base than Seraph. So now we got a full Amp Tome over on top of him. We also go refillable potion because we will get hit by the Seraph every once in a while. He will poke us. And that means that we can now utilize this to create small incremental advantages into him again. So look at the wave state. It's very close towards my side. Once again, I'm countering a training window right here. I need to actually last hit this minion. But what I do is I'm going to combine last hitting this with this minion with a QE on top of his face and I W on top of him as well. Why? Because I play for damage right now. And the reason why I play for damage is because the wave's pushing into me, I'm fully safe, and it's not like I'm going to be using any abilities onto him anyway, because he's going to nuke this minion wave and then disappear from the lane without me being able to interact with him, because I need to respond to the minions. So hence is why it's fine to use the W. Some nice movement here, and we're going to now be collecting the creeps in the tower. And you see that when you're collecting creeps in the tower, now it's his turn to hit me because I'm occupied with getting my resources. I gotta be a little bit careful here because I've got no information on the enemy Nunu. Because of that, I cannot use QE here. Yes, he's walking next to terrain. Yes, it's super easy to land it on top of him here. Potentially I could move up, but look at where my team's at. My team is currently chilling, not on the map. I've got no clue where the Nunu is at the moment. Nunu could literally be anywhere if we zoom back right here. So my team is currently chilling, resetting. That means if I play offensively right here with a QE, the chances of me getting ganked are really high and therefore putting myself in a really bad position. So first, I'm going to try to chill a little bit, wait for my team to be on the map. In this case, I'm nuking the minion wave because while keeping my ear up, because this is going to give me a warding opportunity. And now while getting a little bit of vision out, in this case, I want to play towards top side right here. Because my Z's clearing top side, we can potentially do the grubs with that. Once again, the leaning is very clear. The warding leaning is very clear in this case. And now Seraph is actually on to reset. And what we do is we're just going to be pushing the minions. And what we see is that we now got ourselves the level 6 to level 5 advantage because we got a lot of small win trades on top of him. So I've got first strike. I've got my red pot right here. And what I'm going to be doing is knowing that I've got my R up. He's level 5. I got red pult right here. And I got an extra ball on the ground because I just queued these minions. I know that I'm going to be at my maximum damage right now. So I'm going to actually W into E on top of him, pop my red pot, pop a Q into R. And you can see that this deals an insane amount of damage on top of him. Why do I do this? Is this to kill him? No, it's just to get lane control. By me chunking him after he comes to base like this, from base like this, he's going to instantly be under threat in this entire lane. And it's going to be super hard for him to actually play out this lane. In this case, we got no E and I got my vision on top side. So I am looking, I'm very scared right here because I don't know where Nunu is. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of looking at his movements. This guy's been playing like a bitch the entire lane after getting like pushed in early. And that means that he should be scared, and he should be scared. And what he's doing is running at me right here. He's never been running at me this hard in the entire lane. So I know that something's fishy, and I know that Nunu's coming. And that means that I can just easily dodge out onto the Nunu gank right here. I bait him in, I get a nice little kill, and we get the execute. From this point, the lane's pretty over in this regard. I reach my Q upgrade, and we're now kind of opting into the later part of the lane, which is something we're going to be covering in a different section of this guide. In this next example, we're going to be versing off against Certus in a really high challenger game. And this guy is an incredible player, of course. And we're going to be playing the Syndra versus Victor matchup. This is not an easy matchup for Syndra because of the fact that Victor's trading tools in the early game are just really, really strong. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be approaching the matchup in a different way. We're going to still try to get the push because if we can get the push, that's going to be like insanely valuable for us because it's going to deny Victor trading windows while us getting trading windows. So if we can get it, it's good. But what you see a lot of Victors, especially in high ranks, they'll take very aggressive early game setups and they'll actually try to contest this push and do the exact strategy that we just did into the Xerath and try to do that into us. This is also going to be a very clear example of what happens whenever we play against strong players. So initially, right, you see that he's moving into lane quite late. And that means that I'm already trying to get a little bit of the push in the early game. One of the things that I could have done was potentially like queued earlier. Whenever like the wave's coming, I can already grab up the prior with a Q and I wouldn't necessarily lose that much. Other things that I could have done in this case is actually step up a little bit more up here, start hitting this minion and actually drag it up and drag it backwards to my lane so I can out-attack the minion waves a little bit more without losing control of the space. Because whenever I use my Q, what's going to happen, he can actually walk up in front of me and harass me. But in general, what I do right here is I grab up the prior onto the first minion. I'm creating my first trading window. So I hit my minion and he still needs to last hit his minion. And it means that I can use this to get a nice little Q on top of his face. He Qs to deny the damage of my combat and area, which is actually very smart. I didn't think of that. And then what happens is that I get another Q because of that same reason. But because Victor's so strong in his early trading, what happens is that this next minion, I shouldn't have necessarily hit it. And what happens is, or I should hit it maybe a little bit earlier, hit it once more and then only Q him. But what happens right now is that I'm forced to drop this creep because he's got his Q back up and he'll now take control of the lane by having his Q up, taking up minion aggro, and you see that the Victor therefore gets the push into me. So we've kind of lost control of the push right now. He's going to reach level 2 earlier than me. This is kind of how this matchup goes at a really high level. And it means that we now have to play a little bit more adaptive. So in this case, once again, we land a pretty good Q to him. We definitely shouldn't shy away from like trading and not interacting, because that way you can just completely take control of the lane. We should definitely like not be scared to interact, but we're just going to give up a little bit of the prio. We're going to try to still time our abilities onto last hits, and we just got to understand that he will look to trade aggressively onto us. So in this case, nice little W to counter his trading window. He does a really nice job with these high value E's, and I'm now preparing my minions in their tower. So the good thing about Syndra is that Syndra also has the ability to deny enemy trading windows with her Qs. Like, her Q is such long range, pretty short cooldown, it's really easy to farm with your Q. And another thing that you can do is you can pick up minions, fake like you're gonna last hit, then they will throw their skill shot onto you, then you can just pick it up with your W and then bait out their skill shot without getting hit. That's another thing that you can do. So in this situation, we're just kind of chilling, right? Whenever Victors want to beat you in the lane, because when you get to your Q upgrade in these type of matchups, what's going to happen is that you get extra trading opportunities when it comes to your Q, E, W, Q. And that's the time where your gank setup becomes absolutely ridiculous as well. And that's when they start losing these control mages. So they are going to pressure you quite heavily in the early game. What we see right here is the fadeaway Q that we discussed earlier into this guide, is that they will try to walk at you. You don't have to do it for them. They will try to punish you, especially if they got shorter range in Victor Q, for example. If you can get it on top of you, it's very strong. And what you can do is you can just kite them out, fadeaway Q, and trade back at them when they try to regain space, when they try to take up space in the lane. The reality is, in these type of matchups, even though it sucks, we sometimes have to give a few creeps right here. Very nice W. Onto the Victor, recognize he gets a little bit too close in my range. Really fast W as well, perfectly placed on the edge. W into Q, which allows us to get a little bit of a stack onto him. Unfortunately, we cannot really like do much besides that, because he's just going to be railing us if we go for creeps. And I try to go for a little bit of a high value ability right there. But the most important thing that I'm going to try to do right now is just hit my minions while also being safe. So this was a really, really dog shit QE. And I tried to skill check him a little bit. He didn't have any means to last at the point. You see that whenever I play versus such a strong player like Certus, my mental stack gets sometimes a little bit overwhelmed, and I'll make a little bit more mistakes than I would be, for example, versus a Grandmaster player. Like a high challenger player like Certus, it's just really hard to play against him. He does a lot of fake movements and stuff like that. And I tried to skill check him. I lost and I got chunked for it. If he is really like safe right here and he has full vision around mid, he can abuse the fact that I QE right here, stand up deep into the lane and absolutely annihilate me from all of these minions right here. But I don't think he has enough information and vision to do that, because my Leona was off the map as well. And I kind of get bailed out because of his lack of information. So I still try to time my abilities with last hits. Good movements by him again. Really good W, high value W. Those are the Ws that really going to carry you in these tougher matchups in the lane. And right here, you see that I'm just nicely letting the wave come into me in this case. I cannot really play for the push anymore, because then he'll just freeze the top of me because of the heavy health advantage that he's gotten over me. So I'm taking it easy. I don't want any like crazy ganks just yet, especially if the enemies can like counter the gank. It's not good. So this only works out in this case if the enemies don't counter the gank. Otherwise, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So we get ourselves this beautiful, beautiful Viego stun max range. We follow it up with a QE, which also like perfectly worked out. And then this change CC was really, really good because of the Viego stun being so long. We kept him in this position for a long time, and that allowed us to get this particular play. A lot of Syndras would insta QE right here. Would it land? Potentially, if he doesn't sidestep, but I think it's max range. But the reality is, we don't have to do that. We don't have to skill check him. We can just wait if our other teammates have CC and follow it up on top of them, really getting an easy pickup. And this like completely bails me out in the lane right now. So lane's still going to be very hard versus Victor. But our main goal right now is just trying to get towards our Q upgrade. And you see that there's a lot of these concepts and tools that we can be using for that particular for doing that. And you see that like you still got to be very careful with your abilities. It just was a complete skill check as well. And because he anticipates what I'm doing, I'm getting completely gapped here in the micro department. And even though we did get an assist and we did get a kill on top of him, yeah, he's still just playing these small win traits a little bit better into be really nice Q right there, because it means we're dropping a little bit lower. But you can see how far back I need to stay to like not get nuked in the lane. This is gonna be a little bit more painful. I get like ganked by a volibear, like flashed upon, and since I don't have flash, I'm pretty dead. What happens afterwards, right, is that we need to just get towards our Q upgrade. Once we get towards our Q upgrade, that's when we're gonna be completely fine. So we're gonna be playing a little bit more safe, a little bit more chilling. And then once we reach our Q upgrade, now we have new trading patterns into the Victor. So the trading pattern that we then can go for is Q, E, W, Q. And this is now so far out of Victor's range that he cannot really play into it anymore. So from this point, Victor really starts losing. You see, that's what I'm trying to do, Q, E, W, Q. And the range just gets massively increased, which means that he will never, ever be able to get into Q range with me anymore, because I got so many more Qs that I can zone him off with. And that means that eventually we can also start skirmishing a lot better. And this is really the point where we can like just avoid the Victor in the lane, get into this position where we're able to skirmish, and then we'll just easily be able to take over the game from that. Most Victors will go Mercs to deny that trading pattern. That's completely fine. If you can keep up your CS and just generally do a decent job, you're going to be okay in these lanes. So how does Syndra want to be approaching melee matchups? Generally, the first thing that we have to understand is when to take Airy versus First Strike, because this is a really big difference. Whenever you're playing versus a champ that you cannot kill in lane and there's a lot of regeneration, First Strike is generally a little bit better. So D-Shield, second wind abusers, First Strike is usually a little bit better because we're just going to be playing to skill and stay safe. If the enemies have low regeneration, you go Airy. And if the enemies have a lot of all-in threat on top of you, like the Fizz or the Kiana, and they don't have regeneration, then we go Airy plus Bone Plating. Very important to keep that in mind. So what do we generally want to achieve first melee matchups? We want to slow push and play the waves in a cycle of 2. If we slow push, we're always going to hit level up spikes earlier. We can harass them under third when they need the last hit. Whenever they need to walk up closer towards us, that's when we can also harass them. So try to get the slow push, but don't push too fast and let your wave get frozen on. That's the most important thing. Don't let your wave get frozen on their side. The most important thing in these matchups is to keep in mind that you have to preserve your HP as well. You want to slowly chip away at their HP, but most of the melee champs have high kill ranges. So if you drop towards 70% HP and you cannot pull up, you might just get yourself one shot in the next rotation whenever they flash on top of you and just all in you. Our abilities are usually rotated in a cycle of 2. Because of the fact that these melee champs have ways to get on top of you, you need to either use WQ or use QE, and then keep either the W or the E up, so the enemies cannot just jump on top of your face. You always have the self-beating ability in the slow or in the knockback, in which that you can prevent them from getting on top of you. Very important concept to keep in mind. Versus melees, usually we play in a cycle of 2, while versus range, sometimes it's in cycles of 3. Of course, whenever you're in positions where you can play for damage, you can play in a cycle of 3, but usually it's in 2. So, a few things to understand, right? When not to use E. Whenever you're playing up against champs that are able to get close on top of you, get close to you, like the Echo, for example, with his E, or with the Kiana with her E, you cannot really use your E offensively, because if they then get close on top of you, you will get instantly nuked and you will lose the extended trade versus these type of champs. One of the combos that you can use if you're able to use your E is you can use the E into Q combo instead of the Q into E. Especially versus champs with dashes, this is very useful because you can guarantee your Q hit after Eing them and pushing them away. So you can push them in your Q, which guarantees you a passive stack and a nice bit of damage, of course. So what does the Q upgrade power spike do in these matchups? Well, this really is a big spike for us because of the fact that we now can play a little bit more in a way that we can start playing waves in a cycle of 1 or instead of 2. So we just one-shot the wave. And while we're doing that, we're also going to be trading on top of them. And then we stop cycling in a rotation of 2, but we actually start playing more in a super aggressive manner where we just get this burst on top of their face, one big combo, back off because the wave's already cleared. So we cycle in one wave, we use all abilities in one cycle, we nuke them, we back off, and because with the CC that we also apply, we don't really give them counterplay towards us. Let's take a look at a few examples. Alright, in this game we're going to be taking a look at a Syndra versus Yone game. And this is probably going to be one of the most classical examples that you can get as Syndra, because Yone has D-shield, he's got a lot of regeneration, and he's got ways to get on top of you. This is the classic melee example. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking first strike, because he takes D-shield second win. And one of the things that I try to do into Yone is I try to make sure that he cannot like hard push the wave into me. Some Yones will do that. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to draw the minions back into the lane. Why do I draw the minions all the way back into the lane? Well, by drawing the minions back into the lane, I can now create a bigger slow push, which means that it's harder for him to get to these minions because of the fact that the minions are so close to my side. So one of the things that I do to do that and create that is, number one, I hit this minion and slightly de-aggro it. You see that this minion is now a little bit closer towards me. Then I hit one of this one. And because it resets aggro as well, you see it on top of them, they also get a little bit closer towards me. Then you see that these minions already start getting closer towards my side. What I do as well is I hit the Yone once if he missed spaces, and I'll now get aggro from all of the creeps and drag it even further behind. So we are in a fantastic position already, because it's almost impossible for Yone to hit these creeps without getting damaged by me, because it's so far up in the lane. So we're going to make sure that we prioritize in these melee matchups when they run D-shield second wind. Prioritize your farm and your safety and your HP at all costs. Trading is a luxury. It's something that we will do slowly over time. So I prioritize the minion, I make sure I get the creep, and right now, whenever I've lost hit my creeps, I can potentially hit him with an out attack, once again dragging the minions back here, and we're now building this massive slow push with the next wave coming in. And since I've lost hit my minions, I can now potentially hit him with a Q. I think in this case, I should not hit these minions right here. I should walk up, pressure him with an out attack and a Q right here. I missed a pretty big opportunity to chunk him for like at least 100 HP. So pretty big mistake here. Regardless, right, what we're going to do on this next wave, we're going to reach level 2. We're going to once again draw the minions backwards by getting up auto, aggro. And Yone is a champ that usually only goes in starting level 3. So I actually take W level 2 instead of E. You can also take E, that's completely fine. But in this case, I feel like Yone will only do that starting level 3. So, beautiful W into E right here. W on top of the last hit of W and then Q on top of him to get the passive proc. And you see that we're now in this position where we dodge out onto the Yone W. We drag the minions backwards once again. We don't want our wave to get frozen on his side right there. So, what we do is we drag the minions backwards and we make sure that the next wave is coming in right here to support me. And right here, I try to do a little bit of a W into Q on top of him. I think I slightly rushed the W. The Q was decent, but it wasn't really properly timed with last hits. And you see that I'm just instantly drawing the minions backwards. In the ideal world, what happens is that he just doesn't touch the wave at all. He respects and I can nuke him in the turret. But in this case, he thins out the wave pretty nicely. So I never really get the opportunity to fully nuke him in the turret right here. So we grab level 3 up right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to harass him a little bit. And one thing that I fuck up right here is I go for the Q into E combo. This was not a good combo to go for in this situation. QE was really bad. What I should do, given the wave state especially, is I should go for W into Q onto this particular minion. Keep my E up. Because I missed my QE, number one, my E is now 70 seconds cooldown. He's going to grab level 3. He can potentially trade on top of me if I fuck up with my wave in this bad position. And that kind of forces me to also use W right here. And therefore I lose this creep at the back end and I allow him to fully thin out the wave. So if this lands, by the way, I'm fucked because he's going to absolutely nuke me in the trade. So I tether it out pretty nicely, but in general, the E was really bad. I should go for W into Q. In the meantime, after doing that, I should also ward top side to make sure that I can have a side to lean on where my jungle is going. So few mistakes here in this lane that we already spot out. Once again, we're going to try to slow build this wave into Yone and harass him when he goes for creeps. So we're going to create the slow build right here. And this is a situation where E into Q is really, really strong. He needs to go for the cannon. So what I do is I E into Q to guarantee the last hit. This one was really, really nice. Well done by me. Finally. What we also see is that I don't mind that I don't have E up right now, because I'm so close to my side and the wave is building very slowly, so it'll never get frozen on his side. Which means that we're in a pretty good spot here. We can now hit the Yone and play for a little bit of a cycle of a W plus Q. So that's also completely fine. He gets slowed. He's in a little bit of trouble. And because we're slowly chipping away this health bar while keeping our HP bar very high, we're now in a very decent position in the lane. Yone stays in the lane. I spot Talon on bot, so I don't have to ward. If Talon doesn't show bot, I cannot harass him in the turret. I need to place a ward on top side first. Then I can actually harass him. But since Talon shows bot, I can now nuke him a little bit under the turret. I'm going to bait out his W first. And now I'm going to QE onto the minions. So really nice dodge with his E. And because I know that Talon's not threatening me, I can just nuke this Yone right here with my W as well. And we see that the Yone is slowly like not getting killed. You know, that's how Yones work. But we're just doing a nice job farming it up, getting our passive stacks in a cycle of 2. And that means that we will soon be able to take ourselves a nice little reset onto Lost Chapter. So this wave state is a little bit awkward and a disgusting QE from my side. Completely skill checking, right? This QE was very, very bad. I'm lucky that my karma is hovering me, but you see how much pressure in the lane that I have to give up because I use this QE like that. So not a good QE at all. In different situations, this is going to annihilate your lane. Generally, our goal right now is to try to get the Lost Chapter. We get the creeps right here. Yone is staying a little bit longer. That was a much better QE. Why is this QE a lot better? Much harder for him to dodge. Main is dying real soon. He's close to a wall. And that means that it's very hard for him to dodge out on the ability because there's so little space where he can actually dodge it through. So in general, we're doing a nice little job just killing the minions. And we're going to be opting in for a reset real soon right here. TPing back. We're going to now try to get our Q upgrade as soon as possible. And once we have our Q upgrade, that's when we can absolutely start annihilating the lane because of our burst damage being so high. This Q was used in such a way to do, like, also on these minions. He needs to regain space in the lane. Therefore, me Qing him there is the only way that he can get access to these minions without losing it. It's the only way that the path is right there. So, versus this champ, right now again, very similar position onto the rest of these minions. I keep up my W. I could have held that one a little bit longer. That Q wasn't the worst in this case, not the best as well. And we got ourselves Nautilus ganked. So a little bit of a small mistake when it comes to leaning, warding, threat assessment. I'm just not in the right place at the lane. I should be up way more here. So definitely pretty big mistake. Thankfully, I get bailed out because of my flash and the Shen. Eventually, we get to our Q upgrade at level 7 right here. And now we're rock and rolling versus the Yone. And yeah, our burst damage now is really, really high. So it's hard for him to contest us at this point. So we've done a pretty decent job in the early lane. So for this next example, we're going to be playing against Qiyana. Qiyana is one of these champs that you take area and bone plating into because of their all-in threat on top of you. And what you're going to try to do is chip away at her HP bar while staying safe yourself. Very important that you stay safe yourself. So what we're going to do, right, versus these type of champs, is make sure that we are slowly chipping away the HP bar whenever they're going for creeps or whenever they miss position when it comes to their space in the lane. So what I do in very specifically is auto-attack one of the melees, and I drag the melees a little bit to the side to make sure that the minion wave goes slightly closer towards me. Also auto-attack one of the caster creeps to redirect minion aggro, which means that all these creeps die at a different time. So Qiyana has to walk up in multiple instances and get hit instead of only just once and potentially getting multiple creeps. So that's a really nice start of the lane right here. So what we do is we try to time my Q with that last hit from the Qiyana. Honestly, it was a really good Q. She just decided to not get the last hit and not get hit by the Q. Well played to this Qiyana. Really nice movement right here. And now we can just hit her because it looks like she started W. Otherwise, she wouldn't have this grass thing underneath her. Because I know that she cannot just get on top of me. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to try to once again time it on the last hits. Really nice juke out again by this Qiyana. She lost the creep for it, but she did deny some damage in the lane. So first Qiyana, I'd like to take E level 2. Why? Qiyana can take E plus W combination. Now, that in itself is not necessarily the worst, but if she jumps on top of you with E plus W, with Electrocute, with Ignite, you're going to get put into kill threat, and then on her level 3, she'll all-in you and she'll one-shot you. So I like to prevent that from happening, and I take myself E level 2. Grabbing up the level 2, zoning her from hitting the creeps, making sure that we get the minions. Once again, I try to time my Q with the last hits. You see in this case, she walks up. She tries to dodge it with nice movement, but in this case, it doesn't really work out. And then we land our E on top of her, harassing her. And since she used her Q, I know that I'm now safe. So I know I got no bone plating, but she used her Q. And that means that I can now harass her right here, keeping her at distance. And this is generally a decent trade for me as long as I can pull top, play on my next Q, and she's now so low that she's in a little bit of trouble in the lane. So I'm going to reach level 3 first right here because I'm going to be playing for another two-wave crash right here, slow pull. And because of the fact that I kept my HP high, it's really hard for her to now find an all-in win on top of me. I ward after wave 2 because I know that when there's heavy trading happening, you're always vulnerable to ganks. In this case, Echo tries to gank me on mid. And what I'll do is I'll just walk away through top. And we also QE the Echo. We try to QE the Echo. We hit the Kiana. We get a little bit greedy and we're forced to flash. So this was pretty bad that I'm forced to flash right there. But we got such a marginal advantage into this Kiana that I'm in a pretty good spot. I'm also wasting this Echo time really hard. So it means that my Xin Zhao actually gets a massive lead because of this. We're going to continue the slow build right now. And because we got in this amazing position versus the Kiana, we're in a really, really good spot. So a little bit of a skill check QE there. Other Kianas will dodge it. The reason why I'm comfortable doing that is because of my marginal HP advantage. Of course, if that one misses, I'm in a little bit of trouble. So I'm keeping on the distance really, really well. I want to make sure that I always preserve my HP, never get hit randomly by her E. And that way we can just slowly chip away at her health bar. And right now we've put ourselves in a position where this Kiana is absolutely fucked in the lane. She's got no pots, no TP. She runs Ignite. And that means that from this point, there's no way back for her. A QE her, she levels up and she lives. A little bit of looker, but that's completely fine. But because she still cannot reset, and eventually she tries to get a little bit closer for the minions, I Q her, lane over from this point. Absolutely unplayable. That's how you approach these type of matchups, where you go Airy plus bone plating. Fizz, very similar example. So there's a few sets of matchups that you cannot really apply either strategy into. These are Yasuo, Aurelia, Sylas, LeBlanc, mobile AD carries, like AD carries that have the ability to get on top of your face. And these matchups you gotta like play out a little bit differently because they just got tools to completely annihilate you and get on top of your face and force an extended trade. So if you want to get really specific, check out the matchup hot seats that we got on the Mid Lane Academy. And we're going to be breaking down generally what we want to be doing in these type of matchups. So the most important thing in these matchups is preserve your HP so that if they ever get on top of you, they cannot one-shot you and they cannot kill you. The second most important thing is your wave management. Against these type of matchups, the worst thing that can happen is if your wave gets frozen on their side. Then you are absolutely screwed. So either you play with the wave on your side or you're very slowly building a wave into them with the intention to crash it. And then only afterwards we can trade. So some of these champs have a little bit higher regeneration than others. For example, Yasuo, Aurelia, if we trade onto them, they're just regenerated. But Tristana, Ezreal, Corki, LeBlanc, these are all champs that don't have any regeneration. That means that if you slow play into them and slowly chip away at the health bar with your increased range, you will actually be able to eventually find yourself a winning position. But this is all stuff that we discuss in the matchup hot seats, like very specifically. I am going to be showing an example of like how to approach these matchups just to get a general feeling of it. So in this example, we're going to be playing up against Yasuo. And Yasuo is a very threatening matchup. You see, it's a strong Yasuo player. It's a Yasuo OTP, as far as I know. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to concede priority versus a champion like Yasuo. Because the only thing that this guy can do is he can like completely chase you down the long lane, annihilate you in trades. He can even block out on your E if he windwalls it. So this is a disastrous matchup that we absolutely cannot contest. So my strategy in this matchup is let's chill. We're going to chill, farm up, freeze the wave on our side as long as possible. And I will be able to make the difference starting level 8 when we get our Q upgrade or in the mid to late game when my champ is just so much more useful than Yasuo. And we're also going to be taking first strike because of that. So one thing that is the utmost important thing to do versus a champ like Yasuo is actually not touch the wave at all. So I Q the Yasuo with the intention of having it fully outside of the wave. You cannot hit the minion because if that happens, he can just freeze the wave on the side because I push into him. So you see that I do not interact with any of these minions, and I want him to hit these minions before I do. So we clear both of these minions at the same time. And what happens is that these ranged creeps attack the Yasuo for a second. So now the wave is pushing into us because we had a slightly better level 1 plan. Really nice Q when he goes for the last hit, not hitting any of the minions. That's very important that you not hit any of the minions, because then the wave's going to be in an awkward position. Also be careful with hitting him, because if you hit him, you're going to put yourself in a position where the minions are going to aggro you, and you might get yourself in a position where it slow pushes into Yasuo. Really nice Q plus out attack right there. I know I can do that because of the fact that the wave is otherwise pushing so slowly that it's almost impossible for him to trade onto me anyway. So I'm really confident right here, just playing for my last hits. Fortunately, I missed that one. And we see that we're just going to try to hold the wave a little bit on my side. We take E level 2 and we get a little bit lucky with the E bug. There's an E bug around where I actually got my passive stack up and my Q damage, or like my E damage, one of the two, got applied twice. So very lucky right there on that E. But you see that the wave is in this position. I'm going to try to keep it in the position for the entirety of the lane. Right here what it is, that's where we're going to try to keep the wave. Because at that spot, Yasuo will not be able to like ever find extended trades on top of us. So we're going to try to do a decent job freezing the wave. Nice little QE onto the Yasuo right there to get ourselves a passive stack. And we're going to try to get a little bit of money with the first strike. And we see that we do a pretty decent job of that. Of course, if the wave ever slow pushes back into Yasuo, that's no problem. We can just crash it quite easily if we slow push correctly. So I don't really mind if it does slow push. It's completely fine for me. The most important thing is that I am just going to make sure that either it's going to hold on my side, as long as it doesn't freeze on his side, then it's like completely fine. Slow push or freeze on your side's all completely fine. And you see that Yasuo's, they get a little bit of antsy always. They always want to get their creeps. And you see what I do right here is I'll just hold the minions outside of my turret. And it's always so hard for Yasuo to now address this next minion wave right here. So really good wave management. Also, focusing on the minions, most important thing. If I can get to my lost chapter, that would be really important for me because of the fact that Lost Chapter is going to give me so much mana regeneration that I can just play out the lane afterwards really, really easy. And because of this good wave management, he's actually forced to drop a few minions. Otherwise, he's losing a lot of HP himself. So I'm actually getting a small CS lead, even though I'm playing super defensive in these matchups. It's not like Yasuo can do anything with the priority anyway. Yasuo is pretty dog shit when it comes to his roams. So I got a nice little bit of Vi intervention here, zoning him with a few more minions. Nice little Q whenever he tries to regain space. Not really any other intention behind it. It's not like I can kill him in any kind of way. He's got D-shield. What are we talking about? So, playing it very slowly here. Just hitting him with my first strike whenever it's up. Proccing his shield so it's harder for him to trade. And we're just now trying to get towards our lost chapter. So, taking it very easy here. Making sure that we keep our E up at all costs if he tries to trade on top of us. Try to preserve some mana as well. He goes to try and hit us with the NATO. No problem. We'll chill it. We're chilling. Getting the cannon minion right there into the one shot with my QE. This was really, really good. So what I do is I chill. I wait for the melee minions to die. One of the things that Syndra can do is she can one-shot waves, the caster minions that is, with a WQE at level 5. Very, very important to recognize. WQE, one-shot the minions into a reset, and now we get ourselves to Lost Chapter. If Yasuo freezes his wave, no problem. I TP back with Lost Chapter, and I can then always fix it because I'm so much stronger than him at that point. And if he pushes that out like he does, great. We're going to rinse and repeat this once again. We're going to once again slow play, hold the wave on top of our side, because Yasuo is absolutely unable to function like that. And as you can see, I use my E to even bump the minion away from the turret, hold it outside, force the next wave to get closer towards my side. And it's just pure wave management. And we're going to rinse and repeat this. We're going to jam this shit down through his throat until at a certain point, if you see right here, we can start one-shotting waves with our Q upgrade. Yasuos absolutely lose their shit if they cannot interact with you throughout the entirety of the game. And what you see that what happens is that he'll just force an all-in on top of you. And then finally we got our Vi with level 6 around us. So he just gets himself completely one-shot. End of review for the Yasuo. The next part of Syndra we're going to be discussing is the late lane / how do we snowball our leads in the lane. This is mainly whenever we have our Q upgrade and our Lost Chapter. And with our Q upgrade, we're now fully enabled because of the fact that we can have extra trading patterns into specific champs. Into melees, we can go for QEWQ on top of their face whenever they get close to us, massively bursting them. And versus ranged champs, we now have the same combination that we can use, but now from longer range. So we QE from really long range, and then the end of the E chips away at them, and then we WQ on top of them. Very uninteractive, very unskilled trading pattern. And with the slow of the W, we can then also kite away. So we get a lot of extra trading patterns with the fact that we have our Q upgrade right now. So our general thing that we're going to try to do at this point in the lane is we're going to try to take lane control. And the way that we do that is by taking control of the waves, aka getting the push, and taking control of the trades. So having slightly more, better HP values than the enemy champ, so you can control both of them. This will then allow us to control one side of the map, start warding and leaning heavily. Usually 9 out of 10 games we want to be playing with the side of our jungle. Unless our jungle is an absolute freak, then we're going to be playing towards our strong side of the map, which are the top or bot. And if we have neither, yeah, sucks, then we'll just play for ourselves. But usually it's the side of your jungle. And what we want to be doing is we want to be calling for neutral objectives on that side of the map where you play on your strong side. We want to be early on place, control the space when enemies try to regain it, aka you have the vision control, the enemies need to walk into you to contest the objective. It's easy time for you to damage them, and we play with the mindset of making it hard for them to enter. And then my final top tip right here, use a control ward in a lane bush to abuse Fog of War after we push the wave. So if we go into the Fog of War, the enemies are going to struggle knowing where we are, and it's going to make them sweat a little bit. And then we can look for either extra trading opportunities with our QE when they try to regain space or vision control, or we can just make the enemy bot lane or top lane like a little bit anxious. So we've got a perfect example lined up right here. In this game, we're going to be playing versus an Orianna, and we see that right now we're going to be instantly getting up our Q upgrade right here. So we reach the level 8 and we get our Q upgrade. Overall, we're doing quite alright in the lane, and Vi is really the guy that's also doing pretty alright herself. So you see that I'm instantly trying to regain lane control, trying to get control of one side of the map. You see that my top lane is getting absolutely dominated by the Cassante. My Vi is doing quite alright. My bot lane is not doing the hottest, but I want to be playing towards bot side because my Vi is cleaning top to bot, and my top lane is getting dominated so hard, and it's a tank, so there's no playing it there. So we have to play bot side here. That's why I place my vision towards bot side. We're also playing versus Nunu, so we got to be a little bit careful when it comes to how we approach this lane. Generally though, right, what we do is we ward and lean towards one side, and then we're going to try to get up the wave priority right here, while also being safe. In this case, I'm sitting backwards because I don't know where Nunu is, but Nunu shows right now, which means I'll one-shot the wave. And you see that I get a little bit more extra long-range trading patterns, and I can actually instantly complement my Vi in this case. So it looks like Vi DC'd in that fight. She got herself nuked, and that means that we lose a little bit of control. So sucks, okay? No problem. We're still going to try to play with the Vi, and in this case, actually, we have a double losing side right now and a losing jungle. So I asked my team, play with me. So we're going to be playing on our terms, on our tempo, and we're going to be dictating plays. That means that we're going to grab up lane control. In this case, I try to go for the QEWQ combo on top of her, but I had no other spells, so we cannot really do that. Still, she's a little bit lower on resources. We're taking control of the trades, of the resource war in mid, so we can now, with our new cooldowns coming up, take control of the lane. And you see that I do that with a nice little WQ onto the caster minions, and we can now look for QE combos onto the Orianna. So I think this one wasn't that good. I should have held it a little bit longer. I overplayed a little bit, but the good thing is that we still keep control of the lane. So I could have gotten more out of that situation, but it's not too bad at all. And you see that the enemies are now trying to get re-control. So after I push the lane, I go into the Fog of War. The enemies try to see where I'm going, so they place a nice little ward right there. And that means that I can just clear it and constantly keep the enemies guessing of what I'm doing. So I'm going to be nuking these minions waves when Orianna doesn't show, forcing her to respond to the waves all the time. And this grants me the opportunity to go into the Fog of War and pressure the enemy bot. The enemy bot lane is second guessing everything right now. They know that Vi is somewhere in the area. They know that I went into Fog of War. They cannot contest this wave by me purely having the control around mid. Very powerful thing. I'm the win condition. I'm going to play on my tempo. So I know that the Nunu is comping in. I know that I want to play with Vi, but I'm the important guy. So I'm going to reset first, and I'm going to make Vi wait for me. So I TP back in with my completed item, and this is now enough for me to look for this particular play, because I'm a full item while the enemies are not, and that means that we can now win this particular instance, and I get myself a nice little pick up onto the Nunu, and I instantly take control by trading onto the Orianna and keeping up the lane control right now. So I've got the lane control right now. I've got the full mid push, forcing the enemies to respond all the time. I've got the Fog of War on my side and the advantage on bot side, which is where we're constantly playing. I recognize my Vi is R right now. I got the push. The enemy Yana is playing very far up, so we just fork down, and this forces the enemies to actually back off. You see the amount of pressure that this generates onto the side lane that we're trying to play towards. So I'm solo taking over the game with the pressure that I have on mid right now, making it very brutal for the side lanes to play. Once again, keep up the control of the wave. I don't want to respond to the Orianna. I want it to respond to me. I'm missing all my abilities on top of her. It is what it is. Sometimes I do dumb shit as well. And we just constantly get the push, and we see that there's some action happening on bot right now. And because we're the one with control, what we can do now is we can move down and complement this play with the Vi. And it means that this losing bot lane is now what we're going to be turning into a little bit of a better spot. So what we see right here is that we get a beautiful pick onto the Yana, and because of my first move, we also get the pick onto the Nunu, and we get ourselves a lot of plates onto bot right here. So beautiful stuff. We take our boots, and now we're going to rinse and repeat this particular situation. We're going to try to keep up lane control. I got to stop using my E's like an absolute pig, and then we're going to be completely fine. Even though I use my E's like a pig, right, like actually completely disgusting E usage in the lane right here, I still keep up the lane control because I play it fundamentally better with the warding and with the wave management. And therefore, I keep Orianna responding towards me, and I keep playing towards my strong side, give everything on the top side, because that's where we're super weak, and that's why I don't want to be playing. There's a chance we lose that. So the enemy, Corki, is forced to go towards mid lane right here to contest this control ward that's been nagging him for the past few minutes. And we keep up the control, Lulu sweep that ward, so I know for a fact that the enemies have still no vision in here, and I can still keep fogging. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. Keep up the mid prio, fork into bot, make it completely unplayable for the enemy bot lane right here. And in the end, we get ourselves a nice little play towards bot side, putting pressure onto the Nunu, making it impossible for him to gank, going back towards mid, constantly keeping up the prio, getting the dragon right here, which I also called for with the Vi. And with all of this priority, we're constantly putting pressure onto the enemies. In this case, we're now finally playing on the other side because of a small opportunistic advantage that we had when it comes to the man advantage. And we eventually are slowly taking over the game by the priority that we have, constantly playing into the side lane, making the enemies respond all the time, and being first to place, like a control match really wants. So, moving on to the mid-game section. This is really where the games are going to be won or lost on Syndra, because our impact in the mid-game can be tremendous. Generally, we want to be playing the mid-game like a classic control match, and that means that we want to be first, making it hard for the enemies to enter, and we have this trump card in our E, which is like one of the most OP picking tools in the game, which can just instantly win or lose a game on the spot. So if we find the right target with that E, we're going to be able to decide games on our own. And that's what makes Syndra such a powerful champion in the mid game. Generally though, we want to be farming up, of course, and hitting our key spikes, because each item that we're going to be hitting is going to massively increase our effectiveness. And we want to be looking to shove and move on Syndra as well. That way we can keep up priority onto the mid lane wave. Mid lane wave prio is going to be very, very important. If you can get mid lane wave control, that's going to be mainly the place where you're going to be looking for these picks. When the enemies are contesting the mid lane wave, the enemy AD carry mainly, they're usually very vulnerable, they disrespect the range, and you can look for these picks on top of their face. We also want to heavily emphasize lull stage usage in before the next neutral objective, and if we can contest it. It's very important to understand when to be on mid lane wave. It usually is the final wave before the objective. You want to have the priority on, because you can then force the enemies to respond to that wave, grab up area control, and then make it hard for them to enter whenever you're onto the objective itself. That's Syndra 101, basically. So if there's no neutral objective coming up, you don't necessarily need to have mid lane prio. Like, it's just make sure that you do it at the right times. The most important thing to note is that if you fight well, and if you land your abilities, you will win games on Syndra, right? Especially if you land those E's, you will win fights. So we're gonna also spend some extra time in this guide looking at fights, looking at my mindset in these particular instances, so you guys can learn from those as well. Let's take a look at a few examples here. All right, for this first mid-game sequence, I've selected a game that has almost everything. It has chaos, it has clean macro, it has good shot calling, it has some fights, it has some ability usage, it has fucking everything. So we're just gonna break it down. And we're gonna start off with the fact that the game set's looking quite equal at the moment. We are doing quite alright ourselves, we're pretty strong. We got 2 items, which is always nice. Jungle's 2 items, top is 1.5, slightly behind of the Cassante, who's slightly further ahead than this guy. And when you look at bot is slightly behind currently. Cork is doing quite a good job. So with us and Vi slightly ahead, game is somewhat even right here. So if we look at this from Syndra's perspective, the first thing that we always ask ourselves the question is, what's the next neutral objective? In this case, we got both of them spawning on bot side. Dragon's already up. Altacan spawning in 26 seconds. So it means that we want to be taking control of the area on bot right here. This is going to be an important area to control. And what we see as well is that the wave's now getting pushed in on top. Maokai's covering that. And we got to now ask ourselves the question, where are we going to open up, mid or bot? So in a situation like that, right, you always got to ask yourself the question, can my team get mid prio without me, yes or no? If the answer to that question is no, you're going to be opening up mid. And in this case, I'm going to be opening up mid in general, just to make sure that we're playing a little bit more high percentage, because we don't want to be dropping the mid prio, because that forces us to respond, gives the enemy the area control. So I'm going to be contesting the mid lane wave, while the rest of my team is actually already keeping up the control. So I'm now contesting the wave, and with Maokai moving and Cassante being dead, even though Vayne's in base, we are actually able to get the control of the area and start up the objective fight. This is really good for us, because what happens if the enemies want to fight right now, they need to retake into us, and it makes it very easy for me to land my abilities on top of them. Because if the enemies are running into you, your abilities range is practically, like theoretically, extended. So we get ourselves the dragon for free. Beautiful stuff. What we should do afterwards is very similar to position. We should answer the waves, force the enemies to respond to us, and then grab up area control again. So that's exactly what we're doing right here. We're trying to get up the control on bot here, and Vayne is trying to get control mid. I see that she's getting pushed off by the Cassante. So what do? Is I move mid to try and help Vayne push the wave. So Vayne is a little bit passive right here, which means that we are kind of responding to the wave. And my move window, therefore, is a little bit off. So what I should do instead is I should ask everyone to actually get pushed onto this next mid lane wave and just drop bot lane for the time being. But I'm helping Vi right here and chunking the enemies. And the Maokai is for pretty crazy TP. And this TP is pretty bad. The main reason why this TP is bad is because we haven't made anyone respond to any waves yet. So that means that we're just kind of flipping a fight right here. It would have been much better if he just played top. And he goes for a little bit of a flank with his R. Looking at our team comp with Vayne in base as well, like this is just an absolutely disgusting play that we're witnessing here. So we're just in damage control right here. We're not trying to fight. Maokai and Vi go in. Completely bad play. And it means that we just have to give. We cannot play without Vayne being there. And also not when we haven't made anyone respond to waves. So what we're going to do now is we're going to catch the waves. And we kind of have to give the Altacan. As unfortunate as it is, that's just the reality of the situation, guys. So what I try to do is I try to move mid to answer the mid lane wave. Looks like Cassante plays very aggressively. We hold our E until the right moment. So this was a very nice E hold. So what a lot of people would do right here is they would insta try to QE the Cassante right here from the Fog of War. But I don't do that mainly because of the fact that I know that there's more people behind there, and Vayne, of course, can look him up against the wall. So I hold my spells, and eventually we get ourselves a beautiful pick onto the Cassante and a few of these extra roses. Now we're going to be answering the mid lane wave, and we're going to look for a reset rose soon because we got a needlessly large wall. So we got the needlessly large wall. I recognize I'm the win con, I'm the strongest player. Of course, Vayne as well is getting some items. She will be able to help with the Cassante. But more importantly, how do we want to be approaching the next couple of minutes? We see that in the current state, no objectives are currently up. So that means that we don't necessarily need mid lane control right now. And because there's no objective spawning. So what I recognize is that we can potentially play through side. They've got a very immobile control mage in Orianna. We got a lot of threat with the Vi plus me. So I asked my Vi to hover me in the side lane right now. And that's very important to do because of the fact that what we can do is we can then break through side and push the side lane waves really, really deep. So Vi joins in right here and gets an amazing R angle onto the Orianna, which then allows us to kill her. And killing her in the side lane is really, really good. That grants us so much pressure here in the game. So we're now going to push side lane deep, forcing the enemies to respond. That's the idea. When the enemies are responding, that's when we move away, and we're going to be creating an area in which that we're going to be first. So we get collapsed upon by the Nunu right here, and then we luckily get out right here. And it seems like he's somewhat chasing us, and with the Vi being around the area as well, and him having no R, we got ourselves another beautiful pick. So this pick onto bot, onto the Orianna, put us in an amazing position right here this game. We also get the Cassante TP, so that's so many resources blown by a proper call to the side lane. So we're gonna need to reset right here, get ourselves the next needlessly. And first what we do is we answer mid, because Vayne died on the mid lane wave. We have to answer mid, and then we reset on needlessly. So what we're going to be doing right here, right, is we're going to be asking ourselves the question, what's the next objective? The next objective in this case is going to be, let's take a look. If we press tab, we do got ourselves a tab right here. The next objective is going to be Baron and Dragon, right? What we recognize is that Cassante is just teleported bot. So with Cassante just be teleporting bot, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we get mid lane control before both objectives. Because when both of them are spawning, you want to have mid lane control so you have access to both. And Maokai currently has no TP. And I kind of want Maokai to match the Cassante, because I don't really feel comfortable matching the Cassante that's so incredibly strong. I cannot really play into him. So Maokai matches the Cassante, right? And we just leave top lane for what it is. Why do we leave top lane for what it is? Top lane is not important right now. Mid lane is important. So I'm going to be opening up through mid, looking for some picks onto the Corki. In this case, we see that the Cassante tries to do some crazy stuff, gets in range of Vayne, and Vayne massively chunks him. So you see that there's a battle for mid lane wave right now. And the reason why there's a battle is because the mid lane prio on this next wave is going to be deciding who gets access towards this dragon. So that's why everyone's grouping up mid lane right here, because this next mid lane wave is going to be very important. So Nunu gets a little bit of an engage off, but it's a little bit too deep. This is exactly what we want as Syndra. We want the enemies to come into us. Nunu makes this massive blunder, and we get this beautiful kill onto the Nunu, which grants us complete mid control right now, because we're in a man advantage. We don't waste our ult for him, because that would be a little bit overkill. So we're going to wait with the rest of our spells, and beautiful high value E, stunning both the Cassante and the Orianna. Unfortunately, Orianna slightly lives, but with Vayne being untouched, we can now easily clean up this particular fight, allowing us to get a 3-for-0 into the dragon. And this is our third dragon. That's great. My team doesn't need me on dragon, so I'm going to be keeping up the mid prio, making sure that the Corki cannot get the mid lane wave in. That way, we're always keeping them on their toes, responding to us. We have now a beautiful reset onto our Rabadon staff cap. And this is where it's going to get very clear. We need to play for the next objective, which is on top side, which is Baron. So we got ourselves 4 minutes before the next Drake arrives, even though that's a clear win condition. We do want to take control around the Baron to prevent the enemies from getting it, and potentially we can get it ourselves. So I'm pinging already that I want to go top. I want to create top push, have Vayne on mid push, have Maokai on bot with TP. He's going to be on the weak side. And we want to get top side vision control right here, so we can potentially choke the enemies out and get some turrets on the Baron. So I'm going to be opening up top, and I'm going to be pushing out top lane waves. So what I want to be doing is I want to do that, and I want to try to get some control around mid lane. As you can see, I'm trying to defend my vision. It's really important you try to play for vision, defend your vision. And I want to try to get this next wave out, and then try to move mid to help with the mid lane control. So it looks like my team cannot get mid prior themselves. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sitting back. And it looks like Nunu eventually shows up right here. And we're going to potentially get mid prior on the next wave. But Vayne gets chunked, takes a reset. And therefore we do not get mid prior and no vision. So now we have to play a few waves later and try it again. So I get a little bit of a chunk onto the Cassante. I clear the wave. I try to contest the vision, and I try to contest this next mid lane wave. But now Lulu is resetting, so we can get no vision because Lulu is not there. Nice attempt on the QE. Looks like Vayne gets quite deep herself, and now Vayne just blew her ult for no reason. So it's going a little bit not really where we want to, and looks like eventually she gets herself chunked. So because of the strange reset timers from our bot lane, we're now in a position where we cannot get any control back because we're never pushing out the mid lane wave together. And that means that we're always kind of responding towards the enemies and not being in a position where we can get vision ourselves. So with Vayne being reset and us having zero control because Vayne got chunked, we now lose Baron. And they have Nunu, and we cannot run into the enemies because as Syndra, right, that's not really something that's that possible for you. So we try to contest it right here, but I cannot really get too close. And eventually what happens with the Cassandra on the side, they create a lot of space for their team, and then Nunu just smites the Baron. So we just lost Baron of bad reset timers with our team. We do get a consolation kill into the Cassandra, which is really good because this delays their Baron siege timer, and we get mid T1 for it as well. And what we're doing is we're kind of staying on the map right here because our team is also like still playing. I'm trying to catch someone off guard. Unfortunately, not the best QE. I think not the best positioning as well. On my end, if I had my E right there, that would have been an extra kill. So I think my positioning just wasn't good enough, especially without R. I should have been more in the bush next to the Vayne right here whenever she was hitting turret. So my positioning wasn't good, therefore I couldn't capitalize. Regardless, we got a little bit of a fight happening right here, which isn't that much in our favor. Even though the Cassandra is not there, we cannot really play because our Vayne's not really in a position to play. And what we're now just going to do is we're going to nicely chill, back off. Potentially Nunu may int. We don't really know. Nunu is having a pretty hard game for him as a champion. He doesn't have that much follow-up. But we recognize that the enemies now have Baron. And with Baron, what does that mean? That they're going to get a lot of push in the lanes where they're playing because the Baron minions are so incredibly strong. So Drake's coming up. This was our 4th dragon. This is our soul. And what we want to do is we want to create fights as a team in which we are first and we are controlling the areas where the enemies are then running into us. When they have Baron, it's really hard to create those conditions because of the fact that they have wave prio and therefore they always will be first. So even though we may be high on item spikes, right, and we are strong enough to potentially fight, if we don't create a favorable fight, I'm not really in a position where I want to take it in this particular game state because I feel confident we can outskill. So I decided to drop this dragon right here and actively recognize we do not want to be fighting onto this soul point. I think it's too risky. This is the only time that the enemies will be able to play the game. So I decided to give it and take top tier 1. And I asked my team to hover me so we can potentially play on this top tier 2 as well. Especially if the enemy Orianna is defending where like there's no one else with her. So I think what we should do is we should play a lot earlier onto this Orianna right here. In the end, I do get myself the Vi that finally hovers me right here. And we just easily get ourselves this pick into the Orianna, into the kill, which now creates us a man advantage. Amazing. So what we see right here is that the enemies, right, they have got a few grips, are pushing in bot, and we are pushing in mid and top. So that means that we can potentially trade, and we trade then the inhib for top T2, mid T2. That's absolutely fine. But we decide to actually reset because we don't really have a wave currently right here. And that means that we'll just reset and we're going to be defending. Otherwise, it's going to take quite a while. So the enemies are still are taking a turret, and we're now in a man advantage play because we killed the Orianna on side. That means that forcing a fight right here is generally quite good for us because we're always a man up. And that means we let a beautiful max range stun onto the Nunu with a follow-up CC from the rest of my team. And that allows us to get this amazing pick onto the Nunu as well. And now we are in this position where we can now push out the waves and force the enemies to respond to us. And this is exactly what we wanted. Like, we created this tempo pick on top onto the Orianna. This now allows us to push in the waves deep and force the enemies to constantly respond to us, really putting us in a position of strength. And that allows us in this case to force them to respond to the bot lane. Now we're going to nicely reset. We're incredibly rich. And what we see right here when we press on tab, we see that both side lanes, like top lane is a little bit of like slightly towards our side. Bot lane was pushed out, mid lane is neutral. Where do we go? We want to get mid lane control because we want to get area control for the next objectives. In this case, we got Baron and Dragon spawning. Baron in 1.5 and Dragon in 3 minutes. So if we can play mid into a side, that's going to be very powerful. Hence is why I'm opening up mid here as well. Because mid lane control, especially post 30 minutes, is so important. One single pick can change the game. So potentially I can look for a nice little QE from Fog of War, which is going to allow us to get control. In this situation, we see that we do a really good job controlling the mid wave, and now we finally have the enemies respond to us. A little bit of a rushed E there. In these late game scenarios, that it can get a little bit tense with these E's. You may see that there's going to be a few more missed E's, but a single E can change the game in this situation, right? So what we're going to be doing, right, is the enemies are going to be contesting the next mid lane wave. So we're going to be sitting in the Fog of War. Fog of War is OP on Syndra. Whenever you sit in Fog of War, you can then look for QEs. Disgusting QE. Absolutely disgusting QE. The good thing is that K'Sante also got way too close to us and now is getting free hit by the Vayne. Corki used his W, so Corki's in a position where he cannot play, otherwise he's going to get Fi ulted. And that means that besides that, we have this amazing fight happening right now, which is completely on our terms, and it's impossible for the Corki to hit because of the fight played out. And one final thing to note is that in this fight, I held my R quite long. In the end, we do get a beautiful R right here onto the Nunu. I do think that instead, I should have ulted the K'Sante a little bit earlier and just guaranteed the kill on top of him. I didn't anticipate him to R out like this. But generally, this was a really controlled game. Very much playing towards our strengths and in the position if we could be first. This was really all about how are we actually first at place. And if you're not, feel free to give the objective, and eventually we end the game afterwards right here. We also kill the K'Sante, and we nicely get a sweet, sweet LP. All right, for this next mid-game sequence, we got ourselves a pretty tricky game state. We see that our top laner is really far behind. Our jungler is doing really well. I'm doing quite strong myself, and my AD carry is quite even with the enemy team. Definitely not doing too bad at all. We've got 2 dragons. The enemy's got 6 grubs, and they're about to get the first dragon in the game. For them, that is. So we have a potential win condition onto the Dragon Soul, but at least not this one. This one's going to be quite awkward for us to take. So this is a sequence in which that we're mainly going to be linking up with Vi. Vi is going to be the guy that we want to be playing with because she is so incredibly strong and she's ahead of the curve quite well. The Jax is going to be the main problem. Jax is shafting my counter pick R5 Garen top. So that's going to be quite hard because that means we are losing side lane on that guy. And whenever Garen with Ignite's losing, you're in a boatload of trouble because he's not going to have any impact on the game. Besides that, I'm also losing in isolation of versus the Yasuo. So we have double losing side. Mid lane is struggling to contest, right? And that means that it's quite tricky. The good thing is that we have a jungle that's really far ahead, and with her we can actually win a side lane. But one of the things to keep in mind in these particular positions, right, whenever you're playing with a double losing side, or at least double side laners, you always want to ask yourself the question, can we potentially swap up the lane assignment so we have double winning side? In this case, if I'm going to be matching Jax and Garen matches Yasuo, we certainly have a double winning side lane. Not necessarily because Jax is like not strong at the moment. No, it's just that stylistically my champ beats his. Because I can just guide him forever with my E. He will never get on top of me if I E properly. Same with Garen. Just stat checks the fuck out of the Yasuo. But if we swap it around, we get very awkward positions. So this is a very unique case in which that we can utilize these lane assignments to get proper positions. And that's why I move up into bot and I try to play into the Jax right here. Generally, right, this is going to be a hard mid game to navigate because of how the game state's looking. The enemies also got the mid turret right here. So it's really all about understanding when can we push up and when do we gotta move. And in this situation, my plan was to play with the Vi. So I don't take greedily this extra next bot lane wave, but we actually just play with the Vi instead. We get such a beautiful pick onto the Elise. The enemies got themselves the first dragon and they get out. So now it's all about understanding threat assessment. It's very important that we want to push this bot lane wave as deep as humanly possible. Because the deeper we can push the wave, the harder we can force someone to respond to that bot lane wave. And that responding is then going to put us in a position where we can actually create a man advantage play somewhere else. So I hard push bot lane wave as deep as possible, knowing that my team's reset. So I get a little bit greedy for this wave, but eventually I get it. And after getting this wave, I reset myself as well. Or at least I move towards mid. Because I cannot push any further on bot, because look at where my Vi is. My Vi is now on top side. So what we're going to do is we're going to play top into mid, and we're going to play right now bot, because someone's now responding to this bot lane wave, into mid. And we can now preferably get mid priority onto this next mid lane wave, which is going to set us up for the next objective. We still want to play early to the fight and make it so that the enemies are responding towards us. So, great position right here. Try to fish for a little bit of a first strike. It looks like because we get the mid prio, right, the enemies are now trying to regain control, and we get a nice little pickle to the Gragas. So now, after getting the mid prio, we can just nicely move back towards bot and catch the waves. We only have to catch the waves whenever they hit the turret. So, Garen pushed out top lane very, very deep and is now trying to like overload the area, which is really good because the other can't spawning, right? So what we're going to do right here is we're going to now move into mid. We're going to move as a unit, and we're going to try to contest the Atacon while the Gragas is dead and the enemies are in a position where they're responding towards the mid lane wave. So this is a very powerful position for us. Bot lane wave is a little bit neutral right now, so I want to try to fix that. So in the end, the enemies also have to respond to that. And the enemy Jax kind of trolls it right here, which means we get ourselves a beautiful position into this team fight. And this is all by just pushing the right waves and understanding where we can and cannot contest. So in the end, we get ourselves beautiful E from the side, and we get a fantastic double kill while only our Garen dies. So we got some kills. Do we start up the Atacon right now? That's the question. And I think a lot of people would say, absolutely 2 for 1. We got Vi in the area. We should do it. Absolutely not. Starting up Atacon right now is an instant game loser in this case. Why is that the case? Well, the enemies just had bot side control right here, where they have put vision. The enemies have 2 people dead that have TP up. So if we start the Atacon, they will be able to join in because Atacon's tanky as fuck. And it's going to also reduce our resistances. So that means that we'll just get one shot and wiped and we'll instantly lose the game. So my team is asking to start... it's actually... Look, I'm trying to signal, hey, initially Atacon's up. But I was like, hey, double TP. Let's not start the Atacon. And instead we try to get a little bit of a pick onto the Gragas, but we're kind of wasting on time. And guess what? The double TP is actually coming in. That's the Jax TP coming up right there. And we easily picked that out. Beautiful, beautiful E usage. And unfortunately, we don't really get the kill. But we also see that in this particular position, we don't really lose that much as well. So Jax TP was very, very good. And now the Yasuo TP comes in as well. I recognize they had double TP. We cannot start the Atacon. And with this Yasuo TP being kind of int right here and him getting silenced, Ezreal also trolling, walking into us. This is our space that we're now controlling. We can nicely get ourselves these 2 kills, also preventing the enemies from starting the Atacon right now. So what's going to happen right now is a little bit more creative, right? As Syndra, you can play with Fog of War, and you can look for these picks, especially in this case. I'm really rich, I can reset, but I see that Gragas is overstaying tempo, so I abuse him with my beautiful QE, and we get ourselves a nice little pick onto the Gragas, which is then going to allow us to set up area control for the Atacon. So the Atacon is still the objective that we're going to be playing around, and we recognize, hey, that is the next objective. Same as the Dragon. We got Atacon and Dragon coming up. So what I want to do is I want to create a favorable position for these objectives. It looks like mid-pry is already guaranteed by Corki. So I can now open up top on the weak side of the map. Garen's got no TP, so I have to do it. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to force the enemies to respond towards the top lane wave while we are slowing down the game and not fighting. So we also spot the Yasuo right there, and that means that no one's there to threaten me because both Yasuo and Jax were on bot side, and we know that Yasuo in this case had no TP, so no one's answering to me, and I'm abusing my TP advantage really heavily on top here. And with this particular position, we see that the enemies are now forced to make a rash decision. They're forced to start off the Atacon. And we got the Garen up on the flank. I'm now TPing in. We're not early in this case, but the enemies are losing so many resistances that this is a super easy fight for us to take. We land a beautiful E. Vi smites the Atacon, which is a nice bonus. If they get it, that's also completely fine. We'll absolutely wipe them in the fight regardless. And this allows us to fully wipe the enemies and put us in a position of full power. So really nice macro move right here, forcing the enemies to make a rushed play because I have TP and I can therefore I therefore have to force them to start it because otherwise I just get tier 2 tower for free. So really nice rotation, allowing us to get a lot of control. So we now open up through mid. We recognize next objective is going to be the Baron after getting the Dragon here as well. So we're going to be taking mid into topside control. And this is where when you have all the waves pushed out and you have vision control on areas, you can get very creative on Syndra. And this is what I like to call it. It's a form of a tempo trap, right? And it's just really creative Fog of War usage. And it's just expecting, having some expectation of what the enemies are going to be doing and trying to just kind of counter it. So we see that the Corki, in this case, opted in for a reset. And what happened was that he got killed by Gragas with his GA. So we see that these wolves are still alive, right? And I know that the Gragas is now coming into this right here, and he's going to be trying to do these wolves. So one thing that I do already is I queue the bush right here. Why do I do that? Well, he doesn't see the Q in the bush, and I stack up my R stacks a little bit more. So my R is going to deal a little bit more damage. And then he's walking in, and I just nicely QE him from Fog of War into a one-shot. And this gives us full Baron control because the enemy jungle is right now dead. So we get full Baron control, we easily sneak the Baron, and from this point, it's end of review because we are now so far ahead of the enemies that it's really easy for us to play out the game, siege the turrets, look for some picks. Let's see how that in the end looks like. In the end, we're going to be playing upon the next neutral objective right here as well. And looks like the team is now, the Garen's finally skilled up. The Yasuo was responding to me on top, so I TP in, create a man advantage, and we can now just look for these nice little picks into an R, not necessarily to kill him, but to chunk him and get him out of a fight. It's absolutely unplayable for him. We now get the Dragon Soul, and in the end, let's see what happens in the end. We move in because we're just so much stronger than the enemies. We eventually just ace them and we just win the game. So very nice controlled mid game in this case as well, allowing ourselves for a nice clean victory. Alright, in this next sequence, I want to go a little bit deeper on some ability usage, but still, this is going to be mainly dictated around neutral objectives. In this game state, we can see that it's not an easy game. Right, it's pretty even. We have our third item completed right now. We're quite strong ourselves, and we're going to be getting ourselves to Rabadons. So we recognize in this particular situation, we have Shen and Syndra, and we also don't have that much hard engage upon bot because we had Enchanter sub. But what we do also see is the enemies have Akali and the Yone. So their side laning, especially combined with Talon, is mega strong. It's mega strong, their side laning. That I cannot basically exist in the side lane, because I'll just get insta one-shot by either of these three characters if I ever misstep. So my goal is really to play with the team. We're going to try to play two lanes with Shen on the side because he can just minimize quite well and just clear waves. So we got ourselves a little bit of a skirmish coming up. Right, and it seems like with the Baron coming up, what we're going to do is we're going to move mid. And this is very important to recognize, because we recognize whenever we got to be opening up from the base right now, we got to always ask ourselves the question, what's the location of the waves and what's the next neutral objective? So we recognize that the bot lane wave location is currently right here, and it's a big slow push coming back into us. Mid lane wave is neutral, top lane wave is slow pushing out. So we only can catch bot lane wave when the wave's going on the turret, because otherwise we have to step too far up. And therefore it's no use going bot lane right now. And we go mid to keep our options open. Try to get vision control with our team by pushing out mid and forcing enemies to respond around the objective. And that kind of forces, either that forces Akali to, like we can start off the Baron and forces Akali to TP and then fake it and then back off. We got Akali TP for free. Or what's going to happen is Akali's going to keep pushing. Right, and we keep up the full control right here. And then eventually Shen can potentially answer whenever he's got his R, because I don't want to be on the weak side at all. So that's exactly what we're doing right here. We're trying to play for the mid push. And this is really where Syndra's strength lies, in the sense that you can utilize these situations to grab up control around mid with the Fog of War. And Syndra loves using the Fog of War because we can then look for picks with QE. And in this situation, we land this beautiful pick onto the Ezreal, and we get a little bit of a skirmish happening right here. It seems like maybe the MS did have vision onto us, but in general, we had a very nice QE. We keep ourselves alive by having the next E up for the Talon, and that's why Cosmic Drive is such an incredible item onto Syndra. And eventually, that means that we win this fight and we wipe the fight really hard. So very nice ability usage in this fight, which allowed us to get a nice little, nice couple of picks right here. This pick onto the Yone, Fog of War into QE. You see right here, it's really hard for them enemies to dodge whenever it comes from Fog of War, and that allows us to get another beautiful pickup right there into the Baron. So after Baron, we back off. We instantly ask ourselves the question, what's the next neutral objective? It's the dragon that's up right now. So it means that we're not going to go top, we're not going to go bot, we're going to go straight through mid, because we want to get mid prior before the next neutral. And it seems like the enemies are contesting it right now. So we're going to recontest this particular priority. And with Yone being dead and Shen being on top, we're in a pretty solid position where we can just slow play this. So we're going to get prior onto the next mid lane wave, force the enemies to respond to the wave, and that's when we're going to start it up, making it impossible for the enemies to contest unless they want to be either losing waves or going to be running straight into it. So we get the dragon for free, and what we're going to do right now is when the enemies are pressuring our top lane, we're going to be pressuring mid into bot. Right, that's an ideal what we're going to be doing. So we take the mid lane in up. We cannot really continue after that. So we go into bot because the enemies used a lot of resources on the top. And now we're going to be pushing the bot lane wave, and we see that we're standing off against the enemy AD carry. I always love standing off against enemy AD carries because these guys, they're E magnets. So you land one E on top of them and they're instantly going to die. So one of the things that I do right here is I'm going to be sitting in the bush trying to unload the enemy mental stack on top of me. And with my team just sieging around right here and our Shen having R, I feel very confident that we can do this. So what I'm doing in this specific case is, right, I'm chunking the enemies and I'm constantly going into this bush knowing that they have no vision in there. And eventually there's going to be a point where this Ezreal gets caught off guard and we can nicely hit the QE from the Fog of War, which allows us to easily win, get the one shot, get the tier 2, and that puts us in an amazing position. So there's a little bit of random fighting afterwards, which is not really interesting and not really want to show you. And then what happens afterwards, right, is that we grab ourselves the items. And what we're now going to do is we're going to ask ourselves the question, what are we playing for next? And in this situation, we can play for top, right? Unfortunately, though, I did just use my TP towards bot lane. So playing for top is going to be quite tricky. And we also got the next Cloud Drake coming up real soon. And it's pretty important that we get the Cloud Drake, I think, because we don't want to give the enemies, I think, potentially soul point. I'm not entirely sure what it is. So what I do is instead, I'm very creative right here, and I sit in the Fog War looking to potentially tempo trap someone with a Shen R coming up right here, which is beautiful because we do get a nice chunk onto Yone. And it makes it quite hard for the enemies to get back into controlling the area. So it's our soul, so that's why we want to play here. Because this soul means that it's going to be super hard for the enemies to eventually get to his Cloud Dragon. Soul is generally insanely OP. So what we're going to be doing is keeping up the mid control. I'm constantly keeping up mid prio, mid prio, mid prio, mid prio, mid prio. Because the deeper we get the mid prio, the harder it is for enemies to get control back, because they're constantly responding to the waves. And that allows us to freely take up this dragon. After this dragon, we're nicely opening up to try to potentially get the Baron. Right? We don't really know if the enemies are on it. And what we see is always face check with your W, guys. Don't run into bushes. Always use your W to spot out if there's anyone in the bush or not. So we don't get the kill onto the Talon, but we find a beautiful pick onto the Nautilus. And with how far ahead we are, together with the fact that we got ourselves the Cloud Drake, this is very easy pickup. And we just get ourselves a nice QR flash onto the Ezreal, securing us the victory of this game as well. So you see that really good E usage, right? If you land one or two of these picks, bam, game just completely jumps out of control and allows you to take like amazing control into the game. Moving on to the fighting and E usage section. This is combined because I've recognized that fighting on Syndra is her E usage. If you have good E usage, you will absolutely be able to take over fights. But if your E usage is not that good, contrary to that, you will absolutely lose fights on your own. So in an ideal world, Syndra likes fights where the enemies run into her. And the reason why she likes that is because it's easier for her to land her skill shots when the enemies are running into her, especially through choke points. It makes landing your skill shots very brain dead. That's also like what we're going to see in a lot of examples, right? Where if the enemies are running into you, it's really easy to land your stuff. If the enemies are running away from you, it's going to be quite tricky for you to land your stuff. So how do we use our E in fights? Generally, there's a few things that we have to understand. Our E is our #1 offensive ability, but it's also our #1 defensive ability. So this is an ability that we cannot like understate how important that it is. We also like the CDR-oriented build on Syndra because this allows her to have her E up more in these fights. So your E, if it's down, suddenly the enemies can engage onto you. But your E, if you find a good one, you can potentially find that right pick. You can win the fight on your own. So there's a lot of options that we got with the E when it comes to micro-wise. We can do a double stun in the sense that we have a ball ready with a W, we place a Q right there, and then we have two different angles in which that the balls get shut up, which means more stuns. You can also do the R into E, in which that there's then like multiple balls lined up, which means that you stun everyone. In that case, you don't really utilize the execute part of the R all that often, but you do utilize the fact that there's so many balls on the ground that you now can get insane value from a stun. And finally, one really important thing to keep in mind is Fog of War. Right? Whenever you're in Fog of War, it's much easier for you to land your ability because the enemies are not anticipating you throwing it out. One other note is in fights, it's really important for you to understand like that landing that E is important. So you gotta find and bring yourself through ways to land that E. If that means that using it upon setup from other teammates, or just throwing it out yourself because your team has no setup, it's a big difference maker in that. Like if you look at, for example, a VIR, it's making it so easy for you to land your stun yourself and combo upon her CC preemptively, right? Because it's unskilled. It's just a double instant press R. And what I've seen a lot is that a lot of Syndra just throw out their QE at the wrong time, and then they make sure that they like are not that useful in fights, especially in early game skirmishes. Landing that E is crucial. So, where do we at a position? Well, the most important thing that I see is that you don't do the suicide bomber on Syndra. A lot of Syndra players, especially newer Syndra players, think, hey, I got the execute on my R, I just stunned the enemy AD carry, let's just run at them, throw my entire combo on them, one-shot them with the R. Yes, that works, but then you're going to get yourself killed as well. And that only really works if the enemy AD carry is like the hyper carry, protect the king type of champion. But if that's not the case, it's usually not really worth doing it. You can just play it a little bit slow. You want to stay a little bit further back, still being able to look for those like stunts upon the enemies and getting your damage off without being necessarily that vulnerable. What we're just going to do, we're just going to go into examples and we're just going to be breaking it down. So I got a couple of fights for you guys compiled right here, and we're just going to be breaking them down. There's some good examples, there's some bad examples, in which that we're just going to be reviewing it. And we're going to be starting off with this first one right here. We're just going to be playing it out. As you can see, the E in itself isn't necessarily ideal. We get ourselves Nautilus ulted, and in the end, we get ourselves in a position where we get collapsed upon, and we get one shot. So, this disastrous position, we lose the game of this particular fight. What are the key main takeaways in this one? So first of all, the QE was dog shit. Really unfortunate in a way, because Thresh kind of grabbed him through the wall, which is not necessarily something that I expected. Because of that, Nautilus had the opportunity to ult me into a follow-up from Aurora, which was really well played by the Aurora as well. And then afterwards, what happens is that I didn't anticipate the Aurora flash. I get myself killed, and we lose the game. So what's the main learning in this particular situation? Well, I wasn't anticipating that Thresh was going to be hooking that Nautilus through the wall. That's what caught me off guard, and that's eventually why I got myself killed in this particular instance. So in the end, if I would have landed at E, fight would have completely panned out differently. Would have potentially won the game on this particular play, which is like a massive difference maker, of course. Next situation, same game. Different state right here. So right here, we are in a position where we're in fog of war. Me and Udi are looking to collapse upon this Aurora. And what happens is that we're in the fog of war. That means that usually from fog of war, the enemies don't really anticipate you going for ease. What happens is I think that she's going to respond to the QE. And I think that she would be walking back to dodge it. Guess what happens? In this case, she didn't dodge it, right? As she didn't anticipate it, of course, because we're from fog of war. And therefore, what happens is that I miss the E. We get ourselves into a position where the Aurora lives, the fight becomes awkward, Udyr dies, I get myself changed the seat into a little kill. So you see that the difference between these E's, landing and missing, is going to be the difference between me winning or losing these fights. So what we're going to focus on in the rest of the fights a lot is how are we going to be landing these E's consistently so we can actually win the fights. Okay. In this fight right here, what we recognize is that we go a little bit back here so you guys can see it from the beginning. What we see is that there's a little bit of action happening on mid. So what I do is I try to fish for a QE onto the Kai'Sa. That means that right now I don't really have E up. And it would be amazing to have E in this particular choke point, especially with my Aurora R to follow it up on, because Aurora is an amazing slow, which makes it really easy for you to land the rest of your abilities. So I think this initial E was a little bit rushed and not necessarily that good. And because of that, I don't have my E at the right timing. If I have my E right now, I can combine this with the Aurora R coming up here. I can step up a little bit more aggressively, look for a high value E, and make it work. But because I got a lot of CDR, in the end, I get myself a beautiful W into E combination, and the enemy doesn't expect it because the W into E is really hard to see, so therefore Kai'Sa doesn't flash it. She gets herself slowed. In the end, we do a little bit of a flash QW onto the volley bait to pick him off. Absolutely game-winning position. Really nice stuff. Okay, next situation is we got ourselves a little bit of an earlier skirmishing broken up here. We see that we're going to be contesting the grubbies at around minute 10. The grubbies are going to be spawning in about 15 seconds. And what we see is that we're waiting in fog of war. A very important thing is that you cannot really run in right now because you got to link up with your team. Linking up with your team is very important because if you don't do that, you're going to put yourself in a position where you're really vulnerable. So I let my front line go in first, and guess who's there? It's a Nautilus that just showed up. So what I do is I do QR into E, getting yourself the free one-shot of the Nautilus. And this is a very important one right here. So what I do is I first start with Q whenever I summon. Why do I first start with Q? Well, that means that if you start with Q first, you're going to give an extra R charge to the R. And that means that this R now gets an extra ball, which is a little bit more damage. You see that then there's a lot of balls scattered around here. So I do the R into E, denying him from his escape right here, stunning him, which allows us to get the insta one-shot onto him. So the R into E is a combination that we'll use if we want to be one-shotting someone that's like with a guaranteed stun. Afterwards, we push the wave and we move up towards the fight right here. We see that the enemies are clumped up. Beautiful max range QE into double stun, which then allows us to win the fight right here. And absolutely game-defining moment, of course. Next situation is going to be what we TP in on a fight on top side. And we see that there's a little bit of a fight brewing out after pushing our bot. We TP in, we got our E available. Conditions of the fight look pretty decent. We can play off this choke point right now. So one thing I do is I play in the Fog of War, I play off the choke point, and we get this beautiful Fog of War E onto the Corki, which allows us to then get us in an amazing position. You see all these balls laying around here. Beautiful on the next E, find myself another few picks, and especially versus squishy targets. See that the value from this E ability is just really, really, really high. So this guy just gets one shot with the Corki, and then I'm placing down a lot of balls right here in the choke point. And if you play in these choke points with a lot of balls, you're just going to be able to hit everyone with your stuns, and it's very satisfying to do so, but also just generally really effective. So right here, I'm kind of fishing for Fog of War picks onto this Corki. I chunk him a little bit in this fight, and in this case, we got to be a little bit careful that we don't get engaged upon by Rel. So one thing that I do is I stand away from the rest of my carries. Otherwise, Rel has a very, very, very easy engage upon us. And I decide to instantly ult the Kassadin. Why do I decide to instantly ult the Kassadin? Well, because Kassadin is a champ that wants to be flying in. So if Kassadin is flying in the middle of the fight with all of these balls, look what happens. I get this beautiful R into E 4-man stun, which completely is the difference maker in a fight like that. If you can lock all enemies out in a span of 1.25 seconds, I think that's the stun duration, I'm not entirely sure. For the entire fight, that's completely crazy, the amount of value that you get from it. So that stun, understanding that I need to insta-R the Kassadin, not use it for the execute, but rather for the stun, is a massive difference maker and allows us to win this fight right here. Next example in this situation. We're going to be taking a look at a little bit more situation, a little bit of older clip from the previous map as we see. One thing that we do is that we're going to be using a lot of our abilities onto the enemy CC. And this is a very interesting situation where we're kind of fighting a little bit of a 3 versus 4 at the moment, and our Graves is coming in. So one thing that is on my mind right now is I'm looking to try to buy the most amount of space to wait for the Graves to come in right here. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be looking for the highest value E that I can possibly get. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting 2 W's down, or 2 balls down, to get high value from my E ability. So I place one ball down right here with my W. I place the other ball down right there with my Q. And because of the angles of the E, that means that we can then hit both of them right here, which leads to a massive triple stun, allows for my Graves to come in, allows for my Rise to follow up CC on the other star, and the enemies cannot really retaliate because they're stunned with the E. Beautiful example of how proper micro on this E usage is going to put you in great positions in the game. The next up, this is one of my favorite tricks to do, especially when there's a little bit of a congestion happening on mid. So this is versus Chovy, very strong AD carry player right here onto Ezreal. And you see that at the beginning, he's just kind of dancing around my my abilities. Why? Because his full mental stack is put on these abilities. He's actively trying to dodge them because he knows that I'm trying to throw them out. And because of that, it's very, very easy for him to dodge. So I recognize that, hey, he's like super aware of all of my abilities and he's trying to dodge them out. And in the meantime, I see the Aurora fly over the wall here on the right, which allows me to set this up with a beautiful QE into a nice little kill with the Karma in the back. Very nice classical combo. But the most important thing to keep in mind is versus this Ezreal right here. He's gliding on me at the moment, dodging every single E because of the fact that he's anticipating it and he's looking at these balls very closely. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to overwhelm his mental stack. And that's very hard to do whenever the player is really good. So this is the trick that I like to call the fake out. And this is something that works really well versus basically any AD carry player. And what we're going to be doing is, in this situation, we'll go slightly back, is we're going to literally fake this Ezreal out by overwhelming his mental stack and thinking like I'm a bit of a buffoon. So I throw my W right here. I'll just play it out right here. I'll throw my W up and then I QE him from a different angle. Why do I throw my W completely to Narnia? Well, first of all, that makes like no sense at all. Like if I W right there, he's not going to expect to get stunned because his focus is on this ball flying up right here. And he's like, that shit's not going to land. So he's not feeling threatened by any means. And then I QE him from a different direction. You can also do it the other way around, that you Q, for example, top, and then you WE him right there. That may even be a little bit better because the WE is a little bit faster. As you can see also in how fast that the stun comes out. But in the end, this is a really nice way of approaching situations like those where you are sure that you can use your E offensively and can look for these type of picks. Let's take a look at this one right here. So we got a little bit of situation which that we're contesting the mid lane wave. And what you see with a lot of enemy supports as well, if you play against these squishy supports, like these supports as well, they just get hit by every ability. Look, what is this Nami even doing right here? Just make it quick, make it short, beautiful QE on top of their face. And then look at the positioning right here. Going behind the Fog of War in this area, because in the Fog of War it's really easy for me to land my abilities. So both supports are dead. Very nice dodge by the Wukong, and that means that I gotta be a little bit careful right now. Whenever you don't have E, whenever you use it like that, you cannot really step up. And it's pretty unfortunate because Ezreal actually decides to jump in, and if I have E right now, this Ezreal is dead. So definitely a pretty big blunder wasting my E onto the Wukong right there. I should have played it a little bit slower. In this situation, I see that the Aurora in this case goes really deep. I tried to assassinate the Aurora. Not the biggest fan of this. I don't feel like I have the most amount of impact. I'm not the biggest fan of how I use my E right here. Also, the positioning is a little bit awkward. I think that I'm rushing my abilities a little bit too much in this case. And what we see in the end, right, is in the end, we do still put ourselves in this Fog of War position behind the ledge. And it looks like the Ezreal tries to like 1v1 the Yone right here. And this is just a really powerful position. Like fogging as Syndra is just really, really good. Because what happens is that we're in the fog. Then the Ezreal jumps in, makes a mistake, doesn't have his mental stack on top of me. That's when it's really easy to land your abilities onto someone. Because they're not thinking about you. Just landing your stuff is then incredibly easy. So, main thing to keep in mind, guys, when it comes to your fighting on Syndra, it's all about your E usage. If you land good E's, you're going to be super impactful. If your E's are rushed or you have your E on cooldown, that's when your fights are going to feel miserable, you're vulnerable. So whenever you get these big team fights that rock up in the game, right? Or these game-deciding fights, really look at your E usage and the options that you have with that, because that's really where you can make or break your fights. So finally, what are potential learning objectives that you can have whenever you're going to be playing Syndra? A lot's going to be revolved in the post-game to make sure that your mental stack doesn't get heavily overwhelmed. And it's mainly going to be emphasized on E usage, E usage, E usage, E usage. One thing you can do is review the major skirmishes and fights with an emphasis on E usage. You can also look at the first two deaths from an E usage perspective, mainly because of the fact that more often when you die, you're not really understanding the enemy's threat properly, and therefore you're using your E in such a way that leaves you vulnerable and leaves you exposed to potential killing opportunities. So if you understand when you're under threat, you understand when you can use your E and when you cannot use your E. You can also look at the mid game when it comes to if you're looking to contest neutrals because you're like even or ahead and it feels awkward or you feel like you cannot really get any grip of the particular fight. Look if you're contesting the last mid lane wave before actually contesting that objective, forcing the enemies to respond and then retaking area control, forcing them to run into you instead of the other way around. And an in-game learning objective you can do is trying to time your abilities with the enemy's last hits. This is something that's going to take a lot of time to develop. It's not easy to do. It requires a lot of your mental stack, but definitely something that you can work on in-game. All right, so in this game, we're going to be versing off against Zoe. They got an Elise, we got a Rengar. We opted in for the combat page in this case, because I am looking to contest lane a little bit, not instantly. Versus Zoe, one of the strategies is to actually slightly let the wave come into you early. And because she can always like all-in you down the long lane, right? So it looks like we're playing high master, low grandmaster, something like that. And we're playing as Zoe right here. We also play with Elise. That means that we gotta be a little bit careful because Elise has a lot of gank threat. My Rengar is a champ that wants to be farming up a little bit more. At least he can get early plays around bushes, but generally the 2v2 pre-6 doesn't really look that favorable. Bot lane matchup is pretty tough. Not necessarily that they're like under fire, but they'll get pushed in all the time. But Jinx skills a little bit better. I'm not an expert on the top matchup, but I can see it be quite volatile. Probably should be fine for Fiora. What we may see here is that Elise might early gank top to put this matchup in a little bit of Karen's favor. I can see it be quite tricky for Fiora whenever she wins behind. Yeah, not an easy game. We have limited CC setup on our team as well, but we do have tools in the sense that we can just avoid lane a little bit, get to level 7 or 8 Q upgrade, and then we can really start nuking waves while being safe. I think maybe it's a Merc game, maybe it's Swifty's game. I'll have to see, depending on how the lane goes. Yeah, probably Merc's game when I think about it, but we're not sure. Anyway, let's get to it here. We are going to give Zoe a little bit of early push. So that means if we give the enemy laner push, we're going to try to get a level 1 ward out on the enemy's Raptors. Because of the fact that that's going to then allow us to help my team spot the enemy jungle, give them some info on where they're at, because we cannot really ward early if we're getting pushed in. So I'm going to try to be a good team player and get a level 1 ward out. I'm gonna stay because I need to keep this push. If you want to get a level 1 ward out, you need to keep control of this push right here. If she bubbles me, that's fine, and I'll never die. No level 1 ward for me. I'll reset real quick. It's okay if I'm a little bit later to the lane, because of the fact that I don't intend to contest prio anyway. Zoe started E. Very, very important for me to note that she started E. That's going to give me an opportunity to potentially get a little bit of harass on top of her without I'm still not going to fully contest the wave because I just want the wave a little bit more close towards me. But we can potentially create ourselves a little bit of a trading window. Most Zoes will actually try to contest anyway whenever they reach level 2. So very nice trading window right there. Can also hit her. Of course, we cannot walk too far. Another beautiful trading window right here. We can walk forward. Minion's not getting targeted. I can wait. And now we Q. That's the only time that you can get to the minion. Looks like my Fiora is doing some crazy shit. That's fine. Dodged out on that one really well. Well played. I'm gonna walk forward probably. Really important I dodge that one. Okay, so we're heavy trading quite heavily. And that can get a little bit dangerous for me. because she always has the opportunity to chase me down the long lane with like a flash bubble. So I kind of want to chill right now. I need to be very careful. And also see if she can get any of these bubbles, you know? Or like those little presents. She needs to last hit, so I can hit her. And now I'm just gonna nicely let the wave get into me. So there is her bubble. And whenever she gets that bubble, that's when it's dangerous, because she has 3 summoner spells available together with her W. So that's dangerous as fuck for me. Ay. Okay, thankfully. I thought I would miss the cannon there. Okay, pretty good spot here. We're gonna hold the wave slightly here. And we're just farming it up. And she shows on mid again. We cannot contest that one because she'll bubble us afterwards. Slowly chip away their health bar there. She's looking to get that one right there, of course. I'm gonna be careful. This is a window where I can get ganked by Elise in a little bit of a transition period. So we're gonna keep our camera slightly down on the lane here. There's the Diana already. I just got one shot, 100 to 0. That's the thing that you gotta be careful about with a Zoe, you know? She'll just do that shit. She's got no sims though. And that means that Rengar can clean up. Beautiful. That's what you get, Zoe, for flashing on my face. That's Zoe, guys. That's just the champ. Fortunate that I had to like burn my flash at the end. I really need to move this wave into a move. Good, I got the wave in, so he's losing a few creeps. Good QE. That shit got close as fuck. But it worked out in the end, so it's good. Zoe's so much stronger than me in the early game skirmishes. Like, it's really insane how much stronger than she is. Because of all these sums that she can pick up, right? So this is like your time where you gotta be a little bit careful as Syndra. Especially with these fights, because this is a very quick way that you can lose the game. Just instantly. Because the main benefit of Syndra into Zoe is that, like, once we get our Q upgrade, it's gonna be really hard for Zoe to match our wave clear. So if we get to that point unscathed, we're in a really good spot. But a lot of times, games will explode before that happens. So my top lane is an absolute beast. And we are getting close to our cube red, but not close enough that I warrant myself buying a control ward here. We're gonna nicely move back to mid, chill out, wait for top tempo as well. And then we can potentially contest the grips if the enemies are not on it yet. And we're completely fine using our E like that right there, because we're not in a position where we can get the left anyway. Really good farming in the turret here. Got a ping Zoe and potentially opting at the bot side. So we're gonna go top and then place a nice little ward right there. This gives us a side to lean on. I'm not gonna insta nuke the wave. Maybe I should. Oh, bad decision. And very nicely played. Good bait for the Braum as well. Had a pretty good E there. Oh my god, I missed the cannon. And you see that Zoe's still like packing this massive punch in those fights, you know? Zoe's like so useful. We can deny her a few more minions. We should be able to keep up lane control right now. Because we can set up our own resets because we have full wave control. And therefore it's fine for me to stay. I'm not too low on resources. I can fully control the lane with my current state. Get a little bit of extra poke. Getting the plate. Getting this thing. Which grants a shit ton of XP actually. So we're in an amazing position. Top's getting absolutely stomped. The enemy top laner. So we'll just hard clear next wave. Oh. We force Zoe to respond to the wave. Rengar's slightly inting, but it's fine. Let's reset now. And now we're gonna get a control ward. So now we can warrant it because we can defend it because of our insanely stronger wave clear into her right now. So it looks like Zoe and Elise are the ones that are like performing for the enemy team. So I think Mercs is actually the correct buy right here. So I'm gonna put it in the queue. I risked losing my cannon for hitting Zoe there. Zoe doesn't have much health regeneration in her kit. Besides the fact that she has heal right now. Gonna juke out on that little bit of a bubble. She might even die here. And she's dead. Nice little solo kill. Do I want to move? Fine, I'll move. She still had that shit. Oh nice, we got it. Disaster for the enemy team by the way. Let's get a deep ward here. Zoe's gonna come back, she has no TP. Can I push these waves without dying? I'd say yeah. But maybe not. Nah, maybe inting here. Instead I have a lot of wave clear. And I think therefore I'm able to do it. Nope, I didn't. I'm a greedy fucking pig, guys, and I got punished for it. Zoe flash, Zoe ignite. It's worth. It's worth though. Nah, it's not. I give it a shit down. I'm inting. I'm coping as well. That's greedy as fuck what I just did. It's okay. We're in a really good spot. Double winning sides. Jungle's doing great. Jungle's doing fine. Still got our control ward. Damn, dude. She probably has a ward. Otherwise, that wouldn't. Otherwise, she wouldn't do that shit. Otherwise, that would be too good. I'm doing crazy amounts of damage. This guy's dead as fuck, so no flash. It's free. We're gonna pick ward bot side because that's where the action's happening and our Jinx is 6-0. We're gonna try again on this wave. Hard move. Oh, they're gonna get Zoe too. So since Zoe's gonna impact the skirmish, I don't want to. I'm gonna hit play. Because I can force them to respond and get an extra wave out here. So he's playing. I don't want to join in. But since Zoe's playing there, I'll just stay and hit play. Kind of sucks because this fight was pretty dog shit, but at least we're denying the Zoe stuff on mid, you know? It's not that bad for us. I'm gonna push one more if she doesn't show, because that way we can potentially deny her even more. And set up a slightly better reset. Because with that extra wave, I can buy a slightly better item in the end zone. Sucks that this main doesn't die. Now we got it here. Now we just reset. We'll open up with Jinx and Rengar tempo. They're farming for a bit, so it's fine if I'm resetting right now. Bam, bam. I could get a new control ward, but I'm gonna gamble on the fact that they won't contest it. If they do contest it, it's fine. Then they'll just get it. We'll see. We need our Rengar to bot real soon. Whoa, Zoe's there, no? We need our Rengar to bot real soon because we're going to be playing with the... actually, we got double on the side. It's just that Fjord is a little bit better in isolation compared to the enemies. To the bot lane. I'm 2 levels up here. So he's got no flash. Oh my god. Whoa. Whoa. What hit me? Yana out attack. I got so lucky there. I should have been dead as fuck. I don't know where that guy came from. I got so lucky there actually. My team's performing on bot instead while Yana's away. Ezreal died. Could have pinged, but it's not like it would have changed much, I think. I would have probably went for it anyway. If they died, it's a pretty good death. Wow, she's just taking over the Jinx, huh? Wow, nice movement. It's annihilation, dude, everywhere. I have to play. I just got murdered. That was cold-blooded murder right there. I should have maybe pinged Rengar that I would be moving in a little bit earlier. Nice job, Rengar. Because we kind of lost Dragon for free there. We shouldn't have lost the Drake. You don't see that often. The Void Grubs with a shutdown icon on top of them. But they'll get removed real soon. Maybe we can sneak one. One, maybe. No? Could have gone on one, but it's fine. So, look at the location of the waves, guys. Top's out of pushing, bot's out of pushing. No reason for us to go anywhere else but mid right now. Keeping our options open up through mid. And that means that we can just nicely support the Jinx, make sure she doesn't get engaged upon. Keep topside control, play into the Herald right now. Looks like Rengar wants to farm first. Which, like, definitely fucks up our tempo, but it's fine. Doesn't really matter that much. We can take that rift whenever we want. He's gonna be hovering here. And this guy makes a mistake from the fog of war. QE. Nice hover. She thought she was safe, she wasn't. I'm gonna give all the farm to Jinx, because just Jinx is a fucking beast. Nice up QE. And I ran him down. Never mind. We baited them. This should be able to get us tier 2 and probably play on bot as well. Holy moly, dude. That Rengar got counter one shot there. I don't think he can play. That's insane, that damage, dude. Don't be pushing the waves in. So there are 4 men playing right there. I can lean topside, hit turret. They also have to respond to top. Gotta make sure I don't get myself killed. So they have to respond to top, and they're also responding to Fiora. Always fake your movements when Zoe tries to land a bubble like that. Don't just walk in one direction and you're gonna get yourself bubbled and killed. One bubble equals one kill. A bit maybe of a tempo trap. Let's see if they contest this mid wave. Tempo trap. That's a big string. Beautiful. You can now just go push here. Do a GG. Alright, pretty decent game honestly. Like it was honestly pretty solid. Did I make... Yeah, that first kill of Zoe was nice by her. I made a pretty big mistake there. But besides that, it was a pretty good game.